Hi, everyone. It's Kendall.
And Josh from Mile Higher Media.
And as most of you guys know, last September, we launched our foundation, the Higher Hope Foundation. And honestly, it's been pleasantly surprising how much we have been able to do in our first year, thanks to all of you. The amount of grants that we have been able to offer to victims, families of victims, as well as similar-minded nonprofits in the advocacy space. It's just been an amazing first year.
Yeah, we just wanted to thank you so much for all of your support out there, whether you've given a donation, whether you've purchased merch, which again, all merchandise at milehighermerch.com, 100% of proceeds goes to the Higher Hope Foundation. So that's been absolutely huge for the foundation since we've made that change, but also just by viewing our content, listening to our content, or supporting any of our sponsors, all of that goes into funding the grants that the Higher Hope Foundation is able to give.
And so far in 2025, we've dispersed over $210,000 in grants, scholarships, and projects, and we've also processed over 25 grants.
And right now, we are in our season of giving, and we're only $40,000 shy of reaching our full impact goal. So obviously, we'd love to meet this goal, and we intend to meet this goal. Closing this gap means helping 8 more families or organizations that are still waiting for the help that they deserve.
And so every gift, no matter the size, and by the way, every single cent that you donate goes directly to grants, 100% of that. And every little bit of it makes a huge difference for us and will help people who are still waiting.
And during our season of giving, we're going to be matching every dollar up to $50,000 of donations that are made during this time. And if we reach our goal, we'll also reach our year-end impact goal, which will be huge for the foundation and huge for all of those out there who need help.
Yeah, and it will allow us to start 2026 strong.
You can get involved directly and place a donation over at higherhope.org/donate, or you can start your own fundraiser and get your family, your friends, your coworkers involved over at higherhope.org/get-involved.
Thank you and happy holidays. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of True Crime with Kendall Ray. Thank you so much for joining me today. And if you're new to the show, then welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. And make sure to click subscribe so that you never miss an upload from me. So you guys, today we're talking about a case that has not gotten nearly enough coverage, which actually really surprises me because when you hear the details of this case, I think you're going to be bothered, of course, frustrated, but also intrigued because it's just bizarre. I cannot believe this case has not been solved. And I really cannot believe that it's had really no coverage. A few things here and there, mostly articles. A couple creators have covered it, podcasts, things like that. But there hasn't been any major media production or even a 2020 Dateline, nothing like that, which just really surprised me. And I truly believe that this case could be solved. It seems like it should have already been solved. And for whatever reason, it's been over a decade and it still hasn't been. Today, we're talking about the super strange disappearance of Brookelyn Farthing. And I'm hoping that by talking about it today, we can kind of reignite some attention and interest in her case. And maybe one day, there will be answers for her loved ones. Brookelyn Shea Farthing was born on August 24th, 1994 to her mother Shelby, and she grew up in the small town of Berea, Kentucky. And based on what I was able to find, it seems like her biological father was not in the picture. But when Brookelyn was 4 years old, her stepfather, Randall, came into her life, and he and Shelby raised her together. Also, it seems like everyone in her life just called her Brooke, so that's what I will be calling her today. So anyways, Brooke was the middle child of 3 girls. She had an older sister named Tasha and a younger sister named Paige. And it's very clear that Brooke had a really loving and close relationship with everyone in her family, and I loved this detail, but Brooke also loved to bake. And so one of her favorite things to do was to just bring up a whole plate of whatever it is she baked up, whatever goodies she made, to her mom's room. And they would just lie on her bed, snacking and chatting for hours. It just sounds like such fun girl time. And I'm sure it's something that her mom really will always look back on and treasure. And Brooke wasn't always just there for the good times. She was also someone that really could be depended on through the hard times as well. She was known to be a fiercely loyal person. And her family even said when arguments would break out, between whoever in the family, Brooke was normally the one that would come along and smooth things over, kind of mend it. People also describe her as a very laid-back person, someone who was very easy to talk to. She was very friendly, kind, and loving, and it seemed like everyone she came across experienced this side of Brooke. Growing up, she was active in the Girl Scouts and also participated in volunteer events like making care packages for victims of Hurricane Katrina and also spending time at senior living facilities. And in her free time, Brooke really liked to do a big mix of things. She definitely had this rugged, outdoorsy side to her and enjoyed going fishing and four-wheeling and even hunting. But a lot of people also describe her as a, quote, girly girl who enjoyed doing her hair and makeup. People who knew her said that she was a country girl who wore pink and sparkles, but also could rock her camp. And as she grew up and became a teenager, she had the idea that maybe she wanted to get into cosmetology and do hair and makeup. That was something that she always really loved to do, and maybe she wanted to turn it into a career, but she wasn't entirely sure if that's what she wanted to pursue quite yet. Also, it's important to note around this time, Brooke was in a relationship with a boy named Jared, and it became very serious. I've even seen reports that the two of them lived together, although I wasn't able to confirm that, not entirely sure, but they definitely had a serious relationship going on. They were together for about 3 years, and eventually they got engaged when they were 18. However, eventually they did break up. I'm not sure why. I don't know the details behind the breakup, but it sounds like it was pretty amicable and they wanted to stay in each other's lives as friends and that they, genuinely still cared about each other. And shortly after this, Brooke graduated from Madison Southern High School in May of 2013, but she still hadn't decided exactly what she wanted to do in her future. She told her mom she wanted to take about a month to just be free and also have some time to think with a clear head about whether or not she wanted to go to school or if she wanted to just jump right into working. And her parents were very supportive of her taking this time to make this decision. And in the meantime, she was just enjoying her last summer as a teenager. She even told her sister Tasha that she wanted to make it the best summer ever. But she never got to make that happen because Brooke went missing only a couple weeks after graduating. And to this day, nobody knows what happened to her. And that brings us to June 21st, 2013, which started as a good day for Brooke's family, actually. She and her younger sister, Paige, wanted to take their driver's license test together. So that morning, their mom, Shelby, brought them to go do it. Now, Brooke ended up passing, but Paige didn't. And they handled it about the same way that most sisters would. They were joking around about it pretty much all day. And even though they were bummed that Paige didn't pass, they were very happy that Brooke did. And I can still remember how exciting that felt to have your license, especially in the summer months. I mean, all the freedom coming out. It's a very, very thrilling time. And they were pumped that at least one of them had their license. And so afterwards, they went to the restaurant that their other sister Tasha worked at to tell her the good news and have a little celebratory moment. And while they were there, Brooke was in such a happy mood. She was even excitedly talking about how she had hoped her stepdad would maybe give her one of his old cars now that she could drive. And then after they left the restaurant, Brooke spent the entire day with her family, which in hindsight, I'm really glad she had so much family time that day. Brooke, Paige, and another one of their cousins went to a family get-together to celebrate their grandpa or papa's 70th birthday. Apparently, he had been in very bad health, and the family was really concerned that maybe this would be his last birthday. But what they never could have imagined is that it would be the last family event that Brooke would make it to, because it was later that night that she disappeared. After the birthday party ended, Brooke, Paige, and their cousin all got ready to go to another party that night. And from what I was able to gather, this was a field party that was in a rural, isolated area on the outskirts of town on Red Lick Road. Now, if you didn't know, a field party is basically what it sounds like, an outdoor gathering in a secluded area that usually involves, drinking around a bonfire, that type of situation. And it seems like most of the people that were attending this field party were either high schoolers or recent graduates like Brooke. So she arrived at the party with Paige and her cousin, but shortly after they arrived, around 8 p.m., the two of them wanted to leave, which wasn't a big deal to Brooke at all if they left because she was planning to spend the night at a friend's house. And the friend was already at the party, so it's not like they were leaving her there without a ride or anything like that. And so the two of them left. But then as the night went on, Brooke's plans changed. That friend decided that she actually wanted to leave with a guy, so Brooke couldn't spend the night with her after all. Some witnesses have even said that Brooke was upset by this, and the two of them got into an argument before her friend left. So now, at this point in the night, Brooke was trying to find a ride home, and she ended up coming across a guy that she knew from high school, and he was way too drunk to drive home. And Brooke, being the kind person that she was, decided to find a ride for him as well, which is when she comes across an old friend of Jared's, her ex-fiance. And this guy is very significant in this case. And I'm just going to tell you up front that there are some sources that don't even name him, and there are some sources that do. So his name is definitely out there. Law enforcement has never named him as a suspect or even a person of interest. And of course, he is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Anyone I talk about in this episode is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. But I have decided to use his name today because, in my opinion, and I think you'll agree, he is not a good person. And you'll understand that more later on. But I think even if he didn't have anything to do with Brooke's disappearance, people should still be very cautious about this guy and know his name. So his name is Joshua Hensley. And as I mentioned, Brooke knew him through Jared. And I also want to say that it's pretty weird to me that he was even at this party because, like I mentioned, it was mostly high schoolers and people who had just graduated, but he was 23 years old and just hanging around this high school party. But anyway, Josh ends up offering a ride to Brooke and her intoxicated friend. And so the three of them left the field party at around 2 a.m. And I've seen a couple of different things reported about what exactly happened next. As you can probably tell, there's some conflicting reports, which has made this a little bit confusing. But some reports say that the three of them stopped somewhere on Floyd Branch Road to look at horses, and others say that they actually rode them. And I'm not sure. I mean, I don't live a country lifestyle by any means. I have ridden a horse a few times in my life here and there, but correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe this is very common in horse riding communities, but it's hard to imagine riding a horse that late at night, especially with one of the people being very drunk. So I don't know if that actually happened. And if it did, I think it's odd. And this might seem like a weird detail that I'm including here, but this isn't the first time that horses will be brought up. So just keep that in mind. And also, yeah, it's like sometime after 2 a.m. that they're supposedly riding horses. But anyway, whether they rode horses or they just stopped to look at them, afterwards, Josh brought the other friend home, but then he didn't bring Brooke home. He brought her to his house, or I guess you could say what used to be his house, because it was actually in foreclosure and didn't even have electricity or running water. It's located in a small neighborhood on a cul-de-sac in a rural area, and it backs up to a forest. So it's pretty isolated, and it sounds like a place that you wouldn't want to be at night, especially if you couldn't even turn on a light. And I'm sure you're wondering why he brought her there instead of just bringing her home, and that's something that everyone wonders. We have no idea. But what is obvious is that as soon as she got to the house, Brooke wanted to leave. And we know that because shortly after getting there, she called her sister Paige to pick her up, but she wasn't able to because, like I said earlier, Paige didn't pass her driver's test. And the cousin she was with had been drinking, so they're obviously in a tough spot there. They, of course, wanted to help Brooke, but they also wanted to be responsible about driving in safe, and no one can fault them for that. They did offer to wake up their mom, but Brooke said no, and she told them that she would ask her ex, Jared, to pick her up. And what's interesting is that Paige would later say that Brooke sounded okay on this call. She didn't sound intoxicated or scared. She even asked Paige to unlock the front door of the house because she figured she would be home soon. And after the two of them got off the phone, Brooke started looking for a way home. Apparently, she made calls and sent texts to several different people saying that she felt uncomfortable at Josh's house and wanted to leave. And I'm not sure what exactly she said in those messages or on those calls because not all of her communications from that night have been released, but the ones between her and her ex, Jared, have been. And they paint a very chilling picture, to say the least. At around 4 a.m., she texted him asking if he could come get her. But he was working a shift at a local factory and told her that he wouldn't be able to until he got off around 6 a.m. And she responded saying that she would just wait at Josh's until he could pick her up. And then just a couple of minutes later, her tone shifts dramatically into desperation. At 4:26, she texted him, "Can you hurry?" Immediately followed by, "Please hurry." And then she said, "I'm scared," which is just beyond concerning and disturbing to think about her being so young and terrified in this weird house that doesn't have electricity or running water even late at night with this man that she barely knows. And then it gets weirder because an hour later at 5 a.m., she texts Jared again, and her tone shifted dramatically once again. It said, "Never mind, I'm going to a party in Rockcastle County." Now, Jared had gotten busy at work, so he didn't see any of these text messages until later on. And when he finally did, he responded asking who she was going to this party with. But Brooke never responded. In fact, she never responded to another text message or call ever again. And as for what happened the rest of the night, nobody has any idea. And that is still the case over a decade later. The next morning, Brooke was supposed to meet her friend at a car show at 9 a.m., but she never came. And when he tried to get a hold of her, of course, like I said, she wasn't responding. And that concerned him right away because it was completely unlike her. And he was so concerned that he went ahead and reached out to her family. And as soon as they heard that he couldn't get a hold of her, they were concerned as well because, of course, they start reaching out to her and no one can get a hold of her. And so they are frantically trying to figure out what happened to Brooke after the party. They start calling everyone in her life, everyone she could have been with the night before. And of course, they called Jared, and he told them about those texts that she sent while she was out at Josh's house. And then he gave them Josh's number. So Brooke's older sister, Tasha, decided to call him. And if you already have a bad feeling about this guy, which how can you not based on the things that I have already told you, just wait until you hear about their conversation, okay? It's so weird. So Josh tells her that he didn't know where Brooke was because at around 6 a.m., he left his house because he felt uncomfortable being alone with Jared's ex-girlfriend and also didn't want to be there when Jared came to pick her up. So he claims that he went to go tend to his horses so he could get out of there. And he says that when he left, Brooke was sitting on his couch having a cigarette and talking about a party in Rockcastle County that she was going to. And then other than that, he says he doesn't know anything. And their call ended. Which, for as weird of an explanation as that was, it actually gets even more bizarre because just a few minutes later, he calls Tasha back. And this time, he tells her that actually, Brooke left a lot of her belongings at his house, including her purse, her overnight bag, and the cowgirl boots she was wearing. And I'm sure Tasha was like, what? Why would she leave all of that there? But she asks him if he could take a look at her purse to see what was in there, which is when he tells her that he's actually standing outside of his home, looking at the items through a window, and he can't get to them. Why can't he get to them, you may ask? Well, turns out there was a fire in his home. And yeah, for some reason, he didn't mention that to Tasha any time before this, that there was a fire in his home. Didn't even bring it up in their first conversation. And it gets even more suspicious because this was a very specific fire. The only thing that was on fire in his home was the couch, the exact same spot where he said Brooke had been before she disappeared. And the flames didn't spread anywhere else, but they were definitely intense. The couch was burned down to the metal frame, and there was damage to the floor underneath it as well. But nothing else in the entire house was damaged, which makes no fucking sense, right? And what's even more weird is that I couldn't confirm whether or not Josh even called 911 about the fire. We do know that after the call with Tasha, she called the police, but I wasn't able to determine whether she was the first one to report the fire or if Josh had already called about it. But either way, responders did go to the home, and a missing persons report was officially filed, which is when law enforcement started their search for Brooke. And one of the first things they investigated was the supposed party in Rockcastle County that Jared received the text about. But they were unable to verify if this party even happened. And I don't think it did, because not a single person they spoke to knew anything about it. No one in Brooke's life, none of her family, friends, any locals that they spoke to had ever heard of it happening. And what's even more concerning, and even more so tells us that this party did not occur, is that they went through Brooke's phone and there was no evidence that she had been told anything about this party. So how would she have known that she wanted to go? And even if this party did exist, why on earth would she all of a sudden want to go to it? It was so late at this point, and she was trying to get home. This party was 15 miles away. It just makes no sense. And that wasn't the only weird thing that her phone revealed. They also found out that her phone wasn't shut off for 2 to 3 days after she disappeared, which was likely just because the battery had died by that point. And during that time, Brooke literally got thousands of texts and calls, and she didn't respond to anything. There was no outgoing activity on her phone whatsoever. And they were also able to determine that her phone last pinged in the Blue Lick area, which is approximately 30 miles west of both Josh's house and Rockcastle County. And obviously, their next step at that point is to figure out how the phone got out there, and also if Brooke was out there too. So the Kentucky State Police conducted extensive ground searches around the Blue Lick area. And this was very difficult because the Blue Lick area is very rough, rugged terrain that's also very unsafe. There are cliffs, lakes, ponds, drop-offs, even very dense forests with wild animals and snakes, which of course makes it extremely hazardous for people to search through. However, the Kentucky State Police still did their best by bringing out horses and cadaver dogs. They also had divers out there that were combing through different bodies of water, and overall 16,000 acres were searched around 3 different counties, but unfortunately, no evidence was uncovered. And only about a month after Brooke's disappearance, all regular ground searches were called off. Law enforcement issued an alert in 4 different counties, including Rockcastle, asking people to check their property or land for any signs of Brooke. But that didn't turn up anything either. Now, I have someone on my team who knows 2 people who live in the Berea area, and they were able to give us some insight into what it was like around town during that time. And like I said in the beginning of the episode, it's a very small town where a lot of people, most people just know each other, and also very little crime happens there, especially any violent crime. So I guess when Brooke first went missing, it was really hard for people to wrap their minds around anything violent happening to her. But in the weeks that followed the disappearance, it was hard to deny that possibility when there was no sign of her. From my understanding, it didn't take long for pretty much everyone in town to know about Brooke, and everyone wanted to know what happened to her. And unfortunately, all these years later, people in town, and most importantly, Brooke's family and her friends, all of her loved ones, are still waiting for answers. There haven't been any significant updates in Brooke's case since she first went missing in 2013. However, years later, some major news dropped about Josh. It turns out he is a bad person, and that becomes all the more clear in 2020 when the Kentucky State Police Electronic Crime Branch learned that 3 men in Berea possessed and distributed child sexual abuse images, and one of those men was Joshua Hensley. He was arrested and charged with crimes related to possessing CSAM as well as harmful behavior towards a minor. And while I was reading through all of his charges, it was very clear that this man does not care about harming others, and he's, in my opinion, a danger to society. Based on what I could find, it appears that Josh was convicted in 2021, and then he was released in August of 2025 and is under supervision until 2030. And you would think that his arrest would have been major news, right? I mean, the last known person to have been with a missing younger girl. Remember, he was 23 at the time, and now he's facing charges like this. It's a big deal, or it should be. However, one of the other 2 men arrested was actually a professor at a local college, and he ended up taking his own life in the midst of everything, which just sort of overshadowed Josh's involvement. So there was barely any media attention given to his connection to Brooke. And those two locals that I mentioned earlier that we spoke to said that when the news of this first came out, there was this, understandably, feeling of hope that maybe the arrest would lead to more information, or maybe they would finally find out what happened to Brooke. But unfortunately, that didn't happen, and they are still left wondering what happened. All of these years later, here we are in almost 2026, and that brings me to all of the theories surrounding this case. And obviously, the most prominent one is that Josh did something to her that night. And in my opinion, it is not hard at all to jump to that conclusion. Of course, the man's innocent until proven guilty. We know. But given what we do know here, it's just too weird. First of all, we can't ignore Brooke's own words when she texted Jared saying that she was scared while at Josh's house. To me, and I'm sure you agree, it's extremely telling that something bad, or at the very least, inappropriate, had happened. For her to have sent these 3 very urgent text messages to Jared, very close together, please hurry, I'm scared, and then suddenly shift her tone so drastically to never mind, I'm going to a party, just doesn't add up, which is why people speculate, and I'm sure you're thinking the same thing as me, that last text about the party in Rock Castle may not have been sent by Brooke. And there's no proof that this party even took place. In my own theory, in my opinion, I think Josh did something to her, something bad, and then he went through her phone either before or after that happened, and he saw that Jared was planning to come pick her up, and he knew, I can't let him come see what's going on here. So he sent that text message to get Jared not to come, to think that Brooke had left his house. And then, of course, it gets even weirder when you look at the conversation he had with Tasha and telling her that he wanted to go tend to the horses because he knew that Jared was coming and didn't want to be there. All of that's bizarre. But the weirdest thing of all is the fact that his couch, and only his couch, was on fire, and that's the last place that he says Brooke was. And then another thought, if he was so concerned about being there with his friend's ex when his friend arrived, why wouldn't he just take her home? Seems like he could have dealt with that really easily. And here's something else interesting that I wanted to mention. Take it with a grain of salt because it only comes from one source. It's an article in a local newspaper, but it said at one point, the Dillon Court man told police that he left Farthing at the house and went to a nearby gas station, but when he returned, she was gone and his couch was on fire. Now, I haven't seen this reported anywhere else, so I don't know if it's just misreporting or what, or if maybe he's telling different sources different things. He's telling Tasha, I went to tend to the horses. He's telling police that he went to the gas station. I don't know. And speaking of the horses, I also tried to figure out if he was tending to the horses at the same spot that he took her and her friend to earlier that night, if that even happened. I wasn't able to determine. And it does make me wonder if the story that he told Tasha came from, recalling what he had done earlier in the night and then using like bits of the truth while also making up lies at the same time, because there were a lot of strange coincidences in that phone call with her. Like when he told her that he heard Brooke talking about the party in Rockcastle County, which just so happened to be her last text. And he claimed that when he last saw her, she was smoking on the couch that was on fire after he got home. To me, and I'm sure to you, it's hard to believe that this story is anything other than him just covering his tracks. And there are so many other reasons to believe that he is suspicious, like all her stuff being left behind. Why would she leave all of that? And then Josh not even telling Tasha about the fire right away. Of course, his arrest years later would show his true disgusting character. So all of this sketchy shit leads people to think that he harmed Brooke and then concealed it. And this is what Brooke's family has said they believe happened. They also stated they believe that he would know how to hide her remains because he had worked for the county's road services. So he knows that area well, and unfortunately, there's a lot of areas of wilderness where she could have been hidden and not ever have been found. I'm sure you're all thinking the same thing as me when it comes to the couch fire. I'm sure something bad occurred there, and he lit it on fire to hide the evidence. In my opinion, I have to say once again the police have never even named him as a person of interest, let alone a suspect. So, yeah, innocent until proven guilty, but drives me insane. And God, it makes me crazy thinking about that. I cannot imagine what it's like to live a day in the lives of her loved ones. How they must just know that this is what happened and they can't do anything about it. They can't prove it. Because at the end of the day, even with all of the weirdness surrounding Josh and his house and the later charges, we can't definitively say that he harmed Brooke, right? So let's talk about some of the other theories that have floated around about what could have happened to her. One being that someone else harmed her, which I don't know. I think that really feels like a stretch. Of course, it's possible. As I mentioned earlier, the house is located in a rural area, so it's hard to imagine that a random person would just happen to come across it and do something to her. But I guess it is possible if maybe Brooke finally just got scared enough at the home that she left. I don't know. That sounds crazy to me to even say. Or even maybe she wanted to walk until she could hitchhike to this party, but I don't think the party even existed. I don't think she wrote that last text, but could she have left the house and become a victim of stranger abduction? I guess it's possible. Of course, we know from her text that she really wanted to leave, so maybe she did get desperate enough to just walk out of that house. But then you think about the fact that all of her personal belongings were left behind, even her shoes. She really just left without her shoes? And how would his couch being on fire make any sense if he had nothing to do with it? To me, the only way it might make sense is if something bad happened in the house and then she ran out of the house to get away from Josh and then happened to run into someone else out there. I mean, maybe. It's a stretch though. And keep in mind, it's about 5 a.m. when this happens in a rural area. Some violent criminal just happens to be wandering around. I don't know. You could say that she ran out of the house into the surrounding area out of fear and then got lost or hurt, but that doesn't make any sense either. I mean, that area has been searched and I think they would have found her. Plus, she probably would have had her phone with her, maybe. And you think that she would probably have tried calling for help. So I don't know. That doesn't check out for me at all either. And if that happened, it doesn't explain how her phone ended up pinging off of a tower 30 miles away. Plus, like I said, none of these theories explain the couch being set on fire. Now, let's entertain for a second that maybe she did set the couch on fire and then she ran away because she was worried about Josh being mad at her for it. But again, why wouldn't she call for help or go to one of the nearby houses? And would she really be that concerned about setting this dude's couch on fire in his abandoned house? I don't think so. In fact, her mom later said that one of Brooke's Sunday school teachers lived in that cul-de-sac. So there was someone right there that she could have gone to for help, which is interesting to think about as well, because I'm sure she didn't want to bother this person if she just wanted to ride home because it's the middle of the night. It's her Sunday school teacher. But if she was really in a desperate situation and was able to run out of that house, she would have gone to someone's house that she knew was safe, no matter what time of night it was. And it's also weird to think about the fact that Josh is trying to sell the story that Brooke smoking a cigarette on the couch is what led to the whole thing burning to shit. I mean, I'm no fire marshal, but I don't think dropping a cigarette on a couch would quickly lead to flames like that. Intense flames burning the entire thing down to the floor. No way. If someone started a fire on a couch because of a cigarette, I think you could easily put it out, right? What makes more sense is if someone burned that whole couch down to conceal evidence. But what do I know? And speaking of the couch, I'm not sure if any testing was ever done on it, but if it was, no information from that testing has been released. And I really, really hope they did some kind of testing on it. But again, just like how it feels with everything in this case, the answer seems like it would be right in front of us, but it's still unknown. I truly believe that this case could be solved. It seems like it is solvable. I mean, I don't know what information they have and what they don't, but it seems like the investigation has unfortunately been at a standstill for a while. Brooke's family has waited far too long to get answers, to get the truth. And something needs to be done, and maybe we can all help with that. Maybe it's time for the Kentucky State Police to ask for the FBI's assistance. This is definitely something that some locals in Berea want to see happen, and they have very good reason to believe it could help. You may recall the Crystal Rogers case, which I covered years ago, and I'll link that episode in the description if you're interested in hearing more of the details. But that case happened in Bardstown, Kentucky, which is only about an hour and a half away from Brookstown. And while Crystal disappeared in 2015, the FBI didn't get involved until 2020. And once they did, there was a lot of movement in the case, which eventually led to an arrest and conviction of her former boyfriend, as well as 2 other men, for her murder. So it's possible that involving the FBI in Brooke's case could lead to some answers, but the Kentucky State Police would have to request the assistance, which is where maybe we can help push them in that direction. I'm sure you're probably familiar with the email campaigns that we have done here on this show in years past, but if you're not, I will basically include an email template that's already written for you, so it's super easy in the episode's show notes or description box, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify or Apple, and then you can simply copy and paste that along with the address to send it to. It could not be easier, and it could make a huge difference. So if you have a few minutes, it could be a great way to politely, of course, let the authorities know that people have not forgotten about Brooke and they want to see more movement in the investigation. Because at the end of the day, the answers are out there, right? And additional resources from the FBI could help find those answers. And if you don't want to send an email, but you still want to give your support, you can visit findbrookefarthing.com or follow the Facebook page Missing Brookelyn Farthing, both of which I'll have linked in the episode description or show notes. And maybe you can just send them some words of encouragement, especially after it's been this long. It can just start to feel so hopeless. And just knowing that there are people out there who haven't forgotten, who still care about Brooke, will probably help their family a lot. And before I go, I want to share the official description of Brooke. She is a white female who is 5'1", approximately 105 pounds, with blonde hair and brown eyes. She was last known to be wearing a gray t-shirt with a Madison County Future Farmers of America logo and blue denim shorts. At the time of her disappearance, Brooke was 18 years old, and she would be 31 today. And anyone with information should call the Kentucky State Police at 859-623-2404. And I just have to say, it's just, no matter how many years I have been covering these cases, it's so disturbing to me that even with what feels like so much obvious evidence here, I'm using loosely, but just so many strange circumstances, so much weird shit surrounding someone, that they wouldn't even be listed as a person of interest or suspect. I understand it's more complicated than that, of course, but it's just so bothersome to think that something could happen to you or to someone you love, and there could be circumstances like that, which look very obvious. And a decade later, nothing has been done. No one's held accountable. No one's even named a person of interest. It's just beyond disturbing. I don't know. Definitely want to hear what you guys think. So leave me a comment. Let me know your thoughts on this one. And to Brooke's family and friends, I am just so sorry you've had to go this long without answers. It must be incredibly painful every single day. I truly can't imagine what it would be like. But I will see you guys next week. And until then, stay safe out there. Hi, everyone. It's Kendall.
And Josh from Mile Higher Media.
And as most of you guys know, last September, we launched our foundation, the Higher Hope Foundation. And honestly, it's been pleasantly surprising how much we have been able to do in our first year, thanks to all of you. The amount of grants that we have been able to offer to victims, families of victims, as well as similar-minded nonprofits in the advocacy space. It's just been an amazing first year.
Yeah, we just wanted to thank you so much for all of your support out there, whether you've given a donation, whether you've purchased merch, which again, all merchandise at milehighmerch.com, 100% of proceeds goes to the Higher Hope Foundation. So that's been absolutely huge for the foundation since we've made that change, but also just by viewing our content, listening to our content, or supporting any of our sponsors, all of that goes into funding the grants that the Higher Hope Foundation is able to give.
And so far in 2025, we've dispersed over $210,000 in grants, scholarships, and projects, and we've also processed over 25 grants.
And right now we are in our season of giving, and we're only $40,000 shy of reaching our full impact goal. So obviously we'd love to meet this goal, and we intend to meet this goal. Closing this gap means helping 8 more families or organizations that are still waiting for the help that they deserve.
And so every gift, no matter the size, and by the way, every single cent that you donate goes directly to grants, 100% of that. And every little bit of it makes a huge difference for us and will help people who are still waiting.
And during our season of giving, we're going to be matching every dollar up to $50,000 of donations that are made during this time. And if we reach our goal, we'll also reach our year-end impact goal, which will be huge for the foundation and huge for all of those out there who need help.
Yeah, and it will allow us to start 2026 strong.
You can get involved directly and place a donation over at higherhope.org/donate, or you can start your own fundraiser and get your family, your friends, your coworkers involved over at higherhope.org/get-involved.
Thank you and happy holidays. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of True Crime with Kendall Ray. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you're all doing well out there. And if you're new to the show, then welcome. I'm so happy to have you, and make sure to click subscribe so you never miss an upload from me. Okay, you guys. So today we're diving into a case that tragically took place at the beginning of this year, 2025. And as 2025 is now coming to an end, I wanted to make sure that she is still being talked about. We're going to be talking about the disappearance and presumed murder of Ashley Elkins, who was only 30 years old. Now, Ashley was the mother of 2 boys, and those 2 boys and the rest of her family as well are still waiting for justice. Now, when I first came across this case in the beginning of the year, I hoped that maybe by now-ish that justice would either already be delivered or be close. The good news is I do think that justice is close. I think it's right on the horizon, but Ashley's story is unbelievably tragic, unnecessary, and infuriating. And with that being said, if anyone in Ashley's family happens to see this episode or listen to this episode, I wanted to let you know that my team and I will be reaching out. We would love to offer you all a hope grant through my foundation, Higher Hope, and maybe we can help in some way. Let's go ahead and dive in. So, as I was saying, Ashley Lachey Elkins was a 30-year-old mother of 2, and she was born on February 12th of 1994. At the time of her disappearance, she was living in Warren, Michigan, which I believe is where she was originally from as well. Her mom, Monica, and her little sister, Alexis, have been very, very vocal in the media since she went missing. And it's really been through them and them speaking out that I've learned just how wonderful of a person Ashley was. From the time that she was little, her mom says that she was a quiet, happy kid, never really the type to cry. And as she grew older, she became the person that everyone went to for advice. If you needed something, Ashley was that type of person in your life that you could always go to for whatever it was. She loved to be there for people, and people say that she was just a joy to be around, and whenever she would walk in a room, people would smile. And when it came to her 2 boys, she could not have been a better mother to them. She was dedicated to giving them the best life that she possibly could, and she worked really hard so that their dreams could be a reality. She not only attended cosmetology school, but by the start of 2025, she had already created a successful hairstyling business called Locked In by the Lock Goddess. Obviously, a fun play on words there with locked in, also like locked in. I think that's really creative and fun. So Ashley had a lot going for her, and she was really building a wonderful future for her and her boys. But everything changed on January 2nd. That morning, Ashley's boys, who were 7 and 10 at the time, were being watched by Ashley's sister while Ashley just ran out to run a couple of errands. And she left around 8:30 in the morning and didn't plan on being gone very long. And less than an hour later, her mom was the one who realized that something wasn't right. Monica happened to live 3 blocks away from Ashley, and that morning at 8:40 a.m., she went over to her house. Now, we know that Ashley left 10 minutes earlier, and surveillance footage tells us that she drove her Chevy Malibu to a nearby 7-Eleven. And her mom said that everything was normal up until 9:06 a.m. And that's when she texted Ashley to let her know that she had had a dream that Ashley's car got stolen. And Ashley responded just a few minutes later, and all she said was, "Aw, man." No exclamation mark, no emojis, just nothing, just, "Aw, man." And that didn't sound like Ashley at all. And her mom immediately thought it was weird and decided to FaceTime her because she thought it was weird. She wanted to see that her daughter was okay. However, that call went unanswered. So she texted her again and just told her to be careful of her surroundings. And she thought maybe she would get a reply, was hoping that she would get a reply that sounded more like Ashley, but nothing came through, just crickets. And I just have to say, side note, I think it's really eerie that she had that dream and it freaked her out enough that she felt the need to text Ashley about it. Not that the dream ends up being what happens, but just the fact that she had a dream about her and felt the need to be aware of her surroundings and was worried for her safety. I don't know. I just think that's mother's intuition right there. And as the day went on, Monica continued reaching out, but at no point did Ashley respond. So again, Ashley not responding was completely out of character for her.
When I got to her house, it was 8:40. She left at 8:30. I went in the house for a minute, came back out. I texted her I had a dream of her car being stolen. And she replied back, "Aw, man," which is weird to me. So I FaceTimed her. She didn't answer. So I said to her, just be mindful about your surroundings and, pay attention where you're going. And she didn't call back. That's not like her. And she never called back. And she never texts back.
Ashley was a very responsive person in general, but especially when it came to her mom. She and her mom, for reference, talked every day. Her mom even said that if Ashley ever missed a call or text from her or just couldn't get back right away, it did not take long for her to get back eventually. I mean, it was always pretty quick. So as the hours started to go by, she starts to get seriously worried because this is completely unlike Ashley. She even ended up reaching out to her daughter, Alexis, hoping that maybe she would have some answers. But besides getting a text from Ashley that she was going to the beauty supply store, Alexis hadn't heard from her either. She did have her location on the Find My Friends app, though, and that's when they saw her last known location was at her ex-boyfriend's apartment complex. Now, her ex is named DeAndre Booker, and for context, they had been broken up since September of 2024. And right off the bat, I've just got to tell you, when it comes to DeAndre, man, do we have a real dumb fuck on our hands today, you guys. This guy is a loser. This guy is such an idiot on so many levels. He was never good enough for Ashley, and I think that was part of why everything happened. He knew that. And so when they saw that she was there, that was a red flag for them right away. The alarm bells start going off. It struck them as strange that she would even be there. And that's because, as you probably guessed, their relationship did not end on good terms. And even worse than that, DeAndre had been stalking her, and they had become recently aware of this. And the most recent incident happened just 2 days before Ashley disappeared, and it's quite alarming. So to explain what happened, Ashley's hairstyling business was something that she ran out of her house. And when she was dating DeAndre, she temporarily had to run it elsewhere because he was such a jealous loser that when it came to the idea of other men coming over, he just could not handle it. That's right. This man was so insecure that he would not let her male clients come over to her house to get their hair done. Nope. she had to do that elsewhere. But once she got rid of him, once they broke up, she started doing it out of her house again. And well, he ended up booking an appointment under a different name, of course, to try and see her. And he showed up at her house and everything, but she didn't answer the door. And her sister Alexis was there when it happened, and she remembered Ashley telling her to stay quiet so that he would think nobody was home. And when I heard about this event happening, especially knowing what happened shortly after, I just got chills up and down my spine. I mean, men like DeAndre are absolutely terrifying. And so, of course, when her mother and sister find out that her last location was at his apartment, they're very concerned. And it made no sense to them why she would go to his apartment, right? So they decide to just go on over there themselves and see if they could hopefully find her. And the father of her kids also went with them. But when they did, neither Ashley or her car were there. Her phone had also been shut off, so any chance of reaching her was now gone. And knowing how out of character this all was, they decided to just go ahead and report her missing.
Okay,
Stop contact.
so she needs to stop contact. And so you went on her page and got her other. I'm telling you, it's not like
Why would
her.
she go over there today? What's the
I don't know.
I feel like because she has some financial problems, and he's usually a person like help out.
Like you heard her say, Monica thought that the only reason her daughter would have gone there would be for some financial support. I guess DeAndre had helped her out before, so she thought maybe that could explain why her phone pinged there, because she really couldn't think of another reason for her to go over there. However, she quickly came to the conclusion that DeAndre had to be involved for her disappearance, which was a heartbreaking realization because even though things had gotten really bad, they had all been once incredibly close with DeAndre. He was very much close to their family. And at one point, they actually thought he was the one. During his relationship with Ashley, he treated her kids well, he treated her family well, and he even supported Ashley through her dad being murdered in April of 2024. But towards the end, she realized that he was a controlling, jealous person and that he wasn't entirely who he said he was.
Can you describe their relationship? Have you been around them when they were
Yeah,
together?
he was around my whole family. When I say I thought he was the one who was going to marry her, he was good to her kids. He played ball with them. He took me to their haircuts. Ashley's father was murdered also April 8th of last year. He was there for that. I worked for Stellantis, and we had a Christmas extravaganza last Christmas. He was there. He was there. He was always in my house. I cooked. He was part of the family. So I'm just really shook.
Why did she decide to end it with him, or was it?
When we find out he had like 6 and 7 different pages, like on Facebook, he would have the same people on his page, like replying or, to whatever he posted, which is strange. The same 6 people are not going to always say something. You're going to have different people, different days say things. And that's when we started realizing that something wasn't right with him.
Do you think those were fake or?
Oh, they definitely were.
Yeah.
He was good with computers and doing things on them and making fake pages, making fake documents. We just really didn't know who he was. We thought we knew him, but we really didn't.
So once Ashley was reported missing, the Roseville Police Department kicked off an investigation and really hit the ground running. And they started by retracing her steps and looking for surveillance footage to try and explain what could have happened. Meanwhile, her mom took action into her own hands. The following day, January 3rd, she returned to DeAndre's apartment, and after a neighbor let them into the building, she knocked on his door. And when there was no response, she noticed that the door was open. So she just went inside. Which, to be very clear, if my child was missing and her last known location was her ex-boyfriend's apartment, and I'm standing in front of it and the door's just open, I'm walking in too. So she, walks around for a little bit, but she quickly realizes that Ashley wasn't there. So she left. Here's what's crazy though. Sometime around then, a friend of DeAndre's calls him and tells him that he noticed that people have been poking around his apartment, that people had been in there. And long story short, DeAndre ends up calling the police himself, asking them to go over there, which is just wild because you will not believe what they walked into. I mean, this might be one of the biggest self-reports we have ever covered on this show. He told police that he thought someone had broken in, and he says that he just wanted them to go and shut his front door. I'm sure that's all he wanted them to do was shut the front door. But the officer who showed up saw that the door was open, and he ended up going inside. And when he did, he realized that this was the scene of a crime. And not only was it a scene of a crime, but it was one that someone had attempted to clean up. For starters, the house reeked of cleaning solution. I mean, from the way they're describing it, I'm sure you could smell it even from the doorway. So the fact that he even had police, drew police there himself, I don't know, man. That's crazy shit. So as soon as this officer and his partner start walking through the apartment, the cleaning solution smell made sense because he and his partner found 2 bottles of bleach just sitting out in the bathroom, just sitting out. They also noticed that the shower curtain was missing and the plug to the drain was just sitting in the middle of the tub. Then when they looked very closely, they could see that on the outside of the tub, there was what appeared to be specks of blood. So after seeing all of that, they end up leaving his apartment in order to obtain a search warrant. And thankfully, they got one signed that day. And when they returned, they found a hell of a lot more. When they went back in there, they found specks of blood all over. There were stains found on the bathroom tile, the back door, the cabinets to the sink, even on the walls outside of the bathroom. And it was clear that someone had attempted to wipe these stains away, but those efforts were unsuccessful. They even tried to take a peek in the bathtub drain itself, and there they found some debris with what appeared to contain a blood-like substance on it. And the bathroom wasn't the only area of concern, because in the living room, they found yellow rubber gloves, a gun that was registered to DeAndre, as well as a box of heavy-duty trash bags, several of which appeared to have been missing. There were also a few pink garbage bags as well, and the kitchen trash had been emptied and replaced with a new black bag. Plus, and this is disturbing, but DeAndre's mop had a very suspicious red color to it, which was later confirmed to be blood. And right away, they're able to determine that this is not any type of robbery gone wrong situation because his laptop, his headphones were left out in plain view, which was a sign that someone didn't just randomly break in. They also found a jacket with a fur-lined hood, which will become important here in a little. But ultimately, the blood evidence was impossible to ignore, and additional testing would later confirm their belief that this was the scene of a homicide. And later on, they ended up bringing in a plumber to help deconstruct the drain, and that's where they found a bullet fragment, as well as additional hair and a single hoop earring. And so, as I'm sure you've already put together, all the signs inside DeAndre's apartment point to what sadly but likely happened to Ashley. And finding her was, and sadly still is, the number one priority. So as I was saying before, in order to try and figure out what happened, investigators began to retrace her steps, and 5 days in, there was a discovery. Just a few miles down the road from where DeAndre lived, they ended up finding Ashley's car in the parking lot of a different apartment complex. Her keys were on the seat, but there was still no sign of Ashley, and this prompted another huge search of his apartment.
New developments tonight in the search for a missing mother of 2. Police turning her last known location into a crime scene. Her ex-boyfriend's home is now closed off by caution tape. Meanwhile, her mother is left pleading for her safe return.
I just always worry about my kids. And, I see this all the time on TV. I would never imagine it be me.
Ashley Elkins' family say they received sporadic and odd text messages on the day she reportedly went missing.
Ever since they've been searching for her, authorities say she disappeared on January 2nd when the family saw her leaving her house in Warren. That was around 8:30 in the morning. Hours later, a family member got a text from the mom saying that she was running to the store. However, no one has ever seen her since. One piece of the puzzle was Ashley's car that disappeared in a Chevy Malibu with no license plates. Tonight, police say they found that vehicle. Jacqueline Francis joining us live. Jacqueline, you've been in constant contact with police. What can you tell us at this hour?
It was just a couple hours ago that police confirmed to me that Ashley's car had been recovered a couple miles from here in Roseville is where it was found, we're told. Now, right now, we're also in Roseville. We're at Ashley's ex-boyfriend's apartment. This has been a huge part of the search and investigation today. This is the last place where Ashley's phone pinged, and police have been looking here for hours.
And in a lot of missing persons cases, in the beginning, there can be a period of time where families have some sort of hope that their loved one is out there, that they may find them. And sometimes they do. But Ashley's family really never had that hope because they just knew that something had to have happened, because if she was able to contact them, she would have. And so, of course, when her car was found, that just added to their existing belief that something really bad had happened. And that feeling really only got worse when investigators found some really unsettling surveillance footage. When they retraced her movements from January 2nd, they were able to see that on the morning she disappeared, Ashley started her day by going to that 7-Eleven that I mentioned earlier. And after this, security cameras outside of DeAndre's apartment could see that she voluntarily went up to his place. And let me be clear here, I'm not saying she wasn't manipulated or coerced into going there. I just mean that in the video, it shows her walking up to his place on her own. She wasn't dragged up there by physical force or anything like that. I think chances are she was definitely manipulated or coerced into going up there. I think that is obvious. But anyway, she goes up to his apartment, and for the next few hours, there is no video evidence suggesting what happened. Later that afternoon, though, two people, a man and a woman, are seen leaving the apartment and getting into her car. Here's the thing, though. The man in the video is wearing all black, and while you can't see his face, we know that that's DeAndre. But the girl is harder to identify. She was not wearing the same clothing as Ashley when she walked in, but at first investigators thought that it could possibly be her. So DeAndre and this woman get into Ashley's car and they drive off. And after this, her car never returns to his apartment. But DeAndre, or who investigators believe to be DeAndre, does return, and he can be seen later that day and night lugging several trash bags to different dumpsters around his apartment complex. And the reason they think it's him is because he's wearing the same black jacket with the fur-lined hood that he was seen wearing getting into her car earlier. And that is the same one they found in his apartment. Now, these dumpster visits, I don't know if he is just stupid or didn't realize that there was a camera recording all of this, but they begin at 3 p.m. with a person discarding a giant cardboard box. And then, after the sun went down, he switched to garbage bags. And at one point, this individual is seen walking across the street to a 7-Eleven and returning with a shopping cart. And soon after, you can see them pushing that cart with a black trash bag in it towards the dumpster. And whatever was in that particular trash bag had to have been heavy, because their first attempt to throw it in the trash failed. And this went on throughout the night, and it finally ended just before 5 a.m. Now, sadly, the camera quality is pretty bad, but luckily, investigators were still able to make out enough, mainly through shadows, and they strongly believe that this is DeAndre discarding Ashley's remains. Unfortunately, though, by the time they went to check the dumpsters, the contents had already been collected. They did, however, seize the dumpsters themselves to see if any trace evidence had been left behind. And honestly, they didn't need to wait for those results to know that foul play had clearly occurred here. But the only issue is that without her body or without any type of proof, they could not arrest him for murder quite yet. However, they could arrest him for lying to a peace officer. Throughout the previous 6 days, officers had been in contact with DeAndre, and on a few occasions, he lied about things that they were able to disprove. For example, he said that Ashley was at his house on January 2nd, but he said that she left that day alone in her car and that she left wearing the same clothing that she came to his house in. But we know that's not true, and that's what also makes me think he didn't even bother to check if there were cameras in his apartment complex, or didn't just think there probably are. So on January 8th, they go ahead and arrest him, and they arrest him at another woman's house in Flint, Michigan. They had tracked him there using cameras and phone data, which showed that on January 3rd, he was picked up by an Uber outside of a pawn shop, where he also could be seen throwing things away. And the news of his arrest was a massive relief for her family in many ways. Just knowing that this monster was taken off the streets helped them sleep a little tiny bit better at night. But it wasn't justice yet, and justice was ultimately their goal.
We did meet with Roseville and Warren Police Department tonight, a little after 7:30. We met with Chief Berlin, and we met with multiple deputy chief, and they gave us an update on what was found yesterday. What they indicated was there was substantial evidence collected at the home of the ex-boyfriend. They also indicated that based upon that evidence, that Ashley was murdered. They don't have her body at this time. They do have good leads on where her body is. They also indicated to us that the boyfriend is in custody right now on related charges, not for murder at this time. A warrant is being prepared, but he will be arraigned in the morning at Roseville District Court. Since Monday, the police have worked hard. We're thankful to get to, the point of getting some information. It's not the information we would want naturally, but at this point, it's about justice, because there was a monster out there that took a very beautiful young lady away from us. And if you heard the tears coming from and her children tonight, it's just absolutely heartbreaking.
DeAndre was arraigned the following day, and believe it or not, even more incriminating evidence was brought to light. Now, you guys know that I do love a stupid criminal because they get caught. And this idiot definitely fits the bill. Okay, just listen to these Google searches, you guys. Oh my God. 11 days before Ashley disappeared, he Googled up, telling God, I want to kill someone. Then 3 days before she went missing, he searched for 3 variations of 9mm silencer Roseville. He also looked up murder out of rage X. And on the day she went missing, he searched shoot gun through pillow, shotgun throw pillow. Can you track location when phone is off? Yeah, he really just Googled all that. And it gets worse because 3 days later, on January 5th, he Googled what happens to trash after it's picked up. And lastly, when he arrived in Flint, he searched what to do on the run. Is blood traceable? How to beat a polygraph. And the best of all, delete Google history. Delete Google history. How long is it going to be before we just stop seeing people think that they can delete their search history? You would think by now people would just know that it would just be common knowledge that you cannot just get rid of it. When you do stuff with your phone, it is very hard to get rid of it, almost impossible. Like, it's so dumb. It truly hurts. And I know he hasn't been convicted and his crimes are still alleged. Based on what I've seen here, he's a monster. I am disgusted. And man, it is hard to even find the words for that type of evil, to be casually searching this up, starting 11 days before she even disappeared. And one of the most heartbreaking things about this case, as if losing her wasn't hard enough, is that investigators still, to this day, have been unable to find her. And I want to be clear right off the bat here and say that that does not mean they haven't tried. A search effort to locate Ashley's remains was kicked off right away. Law enforcement worked with the Pine Tree Acres landfill to narrow down where those dumpsters may have been unloaded. And it's hard to wrap your mind around how big a landfill actually is. And for reference, this landfill is over 370 acres. So to search that whole thing would take basically forever. It is truly a needle in a haystack situation, and they had to scale it down to a 6.5 acre plot where they believe that she might be. And then over a dozen law enforcement agencies and volunteers teamed up to try and find her. They did it as meticulously as they could, searching every little bit. They sifted through mountains of trash piece by piece, starting on January 13th, but on the 19th, their efforts were called off. Despite this, but the chief of the Roseville Police Department said that he is determined to bring closure to Ashley's family. Now, as you probably know, no body homicide cases are not as easy to prosecute, quite difficult, but they are not impossible. And it's always important to keep that in mind. And of course, the whole point of charging DeAndre for lying to a peace officer was to first get him behind bars while they looked for her. But despite not finding her, they were still able to move forward with murder charges. On January 30th, the lab results came back confirming that Ashley's DNA was inside of those dumpsters. Her DNA also came back as a match to the blood found inside DeAndre's apartment. So on January 31st, DeAndre was charged with first-degree murder. He was also charged with tampering with evidence, mutilation of a dead body, and concealing the death of another. And following his arraignment, he was held on a $250,000 bond. And thankfully, he has remained behind bars. And for Ashley's loved ones, and I hope all of us, that's where we all hope he will stay for the rest of his life. Her uncle, a former prosecutor, Maurice Morton, has become the spokesperson for their family, and he has been very vocal about the justice they are seeking. He has made many media appearances, like you heard in that clip earlier, and he, along with everyone, wants nothing more than for this monster to be locked up for life. What DeAndre allegedly stole from them, stole from her kids, is just unforgivable. And it's heartbreaking to learn how her boys have been coping. Her youngest son is autistic, and early on, her family said that he didn't fully grasp where his mom went. He would cry and ask when she was coming home, and how do you even truly explain that? Both of her sons are so young to wrap their minds around this, and both of them are experiencing nightmares and living with immense grief that no child, no person really should ever have to experience, but experiencing at that age. They did hold a vigil for her back in January, and you can just feel their heartbreak through these photos, you guys. And Monica says that one of the most painful parts of it all is that he threw her daughter away like trash. All they want is to give her a proper burial. And he not only took her from them, allegedly, but he treated her with the utmost disrespect when he was done. Bringing her home and getting justice are their top priorities. And I really do hope and I believe that that is coming, even though it's taking some time. And you should know that part of the reason justice has taken so long has to do with the fact that there is a ton of evidence in this case, which is good. There are 2 terabytes worth of discovery data accruing to prosecutors, just a massive amount. And earlier this year, in August of 2025, there was a preliminary hearing set to go over it all to see if the evidence was enough to move this forward to a trial. The hearing took place over the course of a few days, during which time several people took the stand to testify about what happened. And let me tell you, this hearing was ridiculous. It was so chaotic, and that was all because of DeAndre. The first day, he refused to sit his ass down. He stood there staring at the people who testified, clearly just trying to intimidate them in some way, which doesn't make sense to me because just look at him. Does he intimidate you? Does he give intimidating vibes? In my opinion, absolutely not. Then, after the first day, he refused to get dressed and just wouldn't cooperate at all. So they had to Zoom him into the hearing. And after that, anytime that they had him on Zoom, he would just yell and scream, "Let me fucking go." I mean, screaming. And so, yeah, they had to just keep him on mute after that. But anyway, Ashley's mom was the first to take the stand, and she spoke to what she said happened on the day her daughter disappeared. She talked about how strange that "aw man" text was, and how uncharacteristic it was for her to go that long without contacting her. The officer who discovered the crime scene also testified, and he described what evidence was uncovered. Plus, more information was learned about DeAndre's past, including the fact that he went AWOL from the Army in 2017, and that he had been less than honorably discharged. And not only that, he also had prior charges for larceny and fraud from 2016. And one of the most damning pieces of testimony, though, came from that mystery woman who could be seen on the video driving away from DeAndre's apartment in Ashley's car. Turns out that was not Ashley. It was DeAndre's niece. Her name is Payne Barksdale, and she testified about how DeAndre manipulated her into helping him move the car. She basically explained that growing up, the two of them had always been close and that her uncle always had been extremely supportive of her. And I guess they lost touch for about a decade. But just before all of this happened, they reconnected. So when he called her on January 2nd and asked her to come help him move this car, she didn't hesitate. He told her that his friend just bought it, and because he, DeAndre, didn't have his license, he didn't want to drive the car to his friend's house. And for reference, the car didn't have license plates, so he explained it would be safer if she drove it, because if she got pulled over, she would get in less trouble. And ultimately, Payne agreed to all of this, and he called her an Uber over to his place. And here she is explaining it all.
So you take an Uber from Detroit to his apartment?
Yes.
And then you said he met you outside?
Yes.
At that time, did you go inside his apartment?
No.
So what happens when he meets you outside?
He give me a hug and then he said let him go back in and get the keys.
So what do you do when he goes back in?
I wait.
At some point, does he come back out?
Yes, he come back out with the keys and we take the walkway and then we go to the parking lot.
I'm going to show you with People's Exhibit 4. So right now, we see two people in the video. Do you recognize either or both of those?
That is DeAndre and me.
So which one are you?
The one with the baby blue jacket, and that's DeAndre with the black jacket.
So when you get in the car with the defendant, what happens? Does he say anything?
Yes, he tells me that when I pull out, to make a left.
Do you know where you're going at this time?
No.
So how do you know where to drive?
He just tells me.
So he gives you the directions?
Yes.
What did you do when you pulled into the apartment house?
I initially parked in residence because he told me that his friend stayed there with his girlfriend, but he said that his friend wasn't on the list, so I had to park in residence.
Do you recognize this car? Is this the car you drove that day with the defendant?
Yes.
So not only does she identify herself in that surveillance video, but she confirmed that Ashley's car was the one that she drove to that other parking lot. Payton goes on to say that he told her to leave the keys on the seat, and then he called another Uber to bring them home. Before getting into that car, though, she testified that he threw something away into a nearby dumpster.
So what happened next?
The Uber pulled up and it's a white Tesla. Right before we got into the Uber, he goes to the dumpster.
Who's he?
DeAndre.
What happens next?
He put something in the dumpster.
And then what happened?
Then we get into the Uber.
After that, she explained that they went back to his place and he invited her upstairs to give her a tour. And she didn't remember anything inside feeling off. She didn't see a crime scene or anything. I mean, really nothing stood out to her. The only thing she did notice is that she asked to use his bathroom and he said he needed to clean it first, which she didn't think was too strange. Obviously, if you're not in a suspicious mindset with someone, them being like, I need to clean up my bathroom before you use it isn't going to strike you as super odd. What's interesting, though, is that she remembered that there was a shower curtain hung in there. And if you remember, that was gone by the time the other officer had discovered the alleged crime scene. And that's not where her story ended. Payne says that after she went to use the bathroom, DeAndre told her that he needed to go to the beauty supply store.
He said that he needs to go to the beauty supply because he needed a do-rag. He ordered us an Uber to go to the beauty supply.
Do you remember which beauty supply store you went to, the name of it?
Kelly.
Kelly Beauty. Oh, so he ordered another Uber for the two of you?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what has been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit 5. Do you recognize this?
Yes.
What is this?
Kelly Beauty Supply.
This is the entrance into Kelly Beauty Supply?
Yes.
And is this where you went with the defendant in the Uber on January 2nd?
Yes.
Is that you?
Yes.
Walking in right now?
Yes.
All right, now we've jumped forward to 157. Who is that?
Me.
So you are walking out of the store?
Yes.
Where do you go when you walk out?
To the Uber.
He stayed in the Uber?
Yes.
Do you know, did he say anything about lying?
Usually when you have an Uber and there's two people, it's always best that one stay because you do have a time limit. And if you're not back in the vehicle at a certain time, they are allowed to pull up.
And I'm sure you remember, but Ashley's sister, Alexis, had said that she received a message from Ashley saying that she was going to the beauty supply store. So I'm not sure if that message to Alexis actually came from DeAndre pretending to be Ashley. It's a weird coincidence. Or maybe it really was Ashley and she also told DeAndre. And so he decided to go there to make it seem like she went. Either way, investigators believe that the reason he went was because he wanted Ashley's phone to ping at the beauty store instead of his house. Payne even testified that DeAndre asked her, if a phone is off, will anyone see the location?
And then he asked me, if you turn a phone off, will anyone still see your location? I said, whatever location the phone was at before the phone was turned off, then yes. And then he asked if him and I could share locations.
Now, make of that what you will, but I think it says a lot. I'm sure you agree. I think all of this says a lot. However, I guess because there is so much evidence, the judge hasn't made a decision yet about whether or not this will go to trial. At the defense's request, he agreed to pause the preliminary hearing so that the court transcripts could be typed up and further evidence could be reviewed. This decision was made in mid-August, and he said it would take a few months. So in theory, we should hopefully know pretty soon. I mean, I'm hoping by the end of the year. And while we all just have to remain hopeful that this will go to trial and will end with justice, we just don't know when that is going to happen, which I can't even imagine how difficult that has to be for her family to just be waiting and not even know how long you're going to be waiting for. Monica and other family members have taken on the responsibility of looking after Ashley's boys, and everyone has had to pitch in to support them. Thankfully, she was surrounded by such a loving family, so it really doesn't surprise me to see how they've come together for her through all of this. But at the end of the day, they shouldn't have to. You know, her boys shouldn't have to be without their mom because Ashley should still be here.
I can't break down. I've been strong this whole time, looking every day from day one. And it's like I can't really lose it because now I got to take care of my grandsons. And so I just got to always just keep getting strong. But I get tired and overwhelmed. And I just want to thank everybody who helped me. I'm glad that people share. I'm glad for social media who sent me information about all sorts of things, his family and people he knew. And I thank the media for when you all came out. Even they would call me and would tell me updates so that I wouldn't see it on social media, trying to just protect me and protect my family. So I really appreciate that. I was on social media. I said I felt like I was alone and I didn't have anybody. And everybody showed me I did, that there are still villages out here. And yeah, I'm going to be okay with time. The boys will be okay with time, but it's just heartbreaking. She didn't deserve this. She was really a sweet, even when she was born, she was a child who never cried. And growing up, she didn't do too much. She was real quiet and happy. She was the person that everybody went to, her friends, for advice. And yeah, this is just hard.
All of Ashley's loved ones have been so strong throughout all of this. It's truly incredible the way they have been able to do interviews and hold themselves together with such grace and tact and just embody that strength has been amazing to see. And I'm just so grateful that they have received so much support. And with that in mind, I also wanted to mention if you're looking for a way to support them, you can check out their GoFundMe page. I'm going to have it linked below. And if you are interested, you know, it's that time of year to give back. If you want to show them any support, you know, any amount matters. Any amount will make a difference, I should say. And I really encourage you to all at least check that out. The funds will go towards giving Ashley's boys the lives that she envisioned for them. And currently they've raised just over $19,000 of their $50,000 goal. And as I mentioned before, my team and I have reached out to offer them a hope grant as well. I know I keep saying this, but I really have a strong feeling here that justice is coming. And I don't know, I think you got to hang on to that hope that one day there is going to be justice for Ashley and she's going to also be found and get the proper burial that she deserves. I mean, that's my biggest hope here for her and for her family. Just a heartbreaking case. So unnecessary, just unbelievable. But that is going to be it for me, you guys. Definitely want to hear your thoughts on Ashley's case. And I'll see you next week. But until then, stay safe out there. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of True Crime with Kendall Ray. Thank you so much for joining me today. And if you're new to the show, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here, and make sure to click subscribe so you never miss an upload from me. So you guys, today we are jumping into a case that I think you will all agree. In fact, I know you will all agree should absolutely have a conclusion by now. It's been over a decade at this point without any justice and without any answers. Today, I'm going to be telling you about the disappearance of Shelly Mook, a young mother who was navigating a divorce. She was a teacher, and she was also raising her young daughter. And everything about her case is so incredibly frustrating and sad. And I just wish so badly that there were, some answers or some kind of justice for Shelly's loved ones, especially for her daughter. And her story is also one that hasn't gotten much coverage. And I really haven't seen anyone talk about it in the last couple of years. So I'm hopeful that by sharing her case today, we can maybe kind of get her name back out there. I know from my experiences working with families and talking to them that oftentimes it can feel like people have forgotten about the victim when no one's talking about it anymore. And I can see how you would totally feel like that. And I don't want that to be the case for Shelly. We have also reached out to Shelly's family to see if they're interested in a Hope grant through my foundation, Higher Hope. See if there's, any way that they can think of that we could support them. All right, let's go ahead and get into Shelly's disappearance. And before I start, this is one of those cases where I have to tell you that everyone I speak about today is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, which probably tells you the direction that this is going to be going and makes it incredibly frustrating. So just buckle in for that. And, it's just so hard with Shelly because we're talking about someone who really only wanted to make the world a better place, was trying to make a difference. And while doing so, she seemingly just vanished. Shelly Lynn Jones was born on June 29th, 1987, and she was originally from Erie, Pennsylvania. And people who had the fortune of knowing her say that she was very, very kind. She was also responsible and loving. And she had the most beautiful blonde hair and green hazel eyes. And her best friend Brittany said that everyone always told her she had $1 million smile. Shelly and Brittany were childhood friends, and Brittany distinctly remembers that when they were in high school, there was this good-looking older guy who sort of caught both of their attention. And he was about 6 years older than they were, quite a bit, and he had a bit of a bad boy reputation. And he was into cars and girls, and it sounded like kind of a lot of girls fawned over him. Now, the two of them first met him at a party, and since they were both, interested in him, they decided to make a bet about who he would go out with, and it ended up being Shelly. This older guy was named Tyler Mook. And I have to just say really quick, the last name Mook has really confused me. There's a couple different sources. Most sources seem to pronounce it Mook. There are a couple sources that pronounce it Mook. And just by looking at it, I would have guessed it's Mook. But I'm going to go with what the majority of sources said, which is Mook. But anyway, her and Tyler ended up going out, and the two of them were practically inseparable after this. In fact, right after Shelly graduated from high school in 2004, they ended up getting married in Hawaii. She had gotten pregnant, and they ultimately decided that marriage was the next step in their relationship. And shortly after that, she gave birth to their daughter, who goes by Lily. And then Shelly decided to go back to school to become a teacher. And it sounds like things were, okay for a little while, but after some time, things really started to sour. Tyler became emotionally and physically abusive towards Shelly. And there were also allegations of infidelity, and her loved ones became very worried about her. Brittany explained that it was just one of those relationships where, when it was good, it was good. But when it was bad, it was bad. They had the classic on and off again cycle, and every time they were off, he would try to win her back again with these love letters and promises of grand gestures and gifts. Like, for example, he would say things like, "Shelly, my love, congrats on your first full day of teaching. My love for you grows like a wildfire. I'm polishing myself for you." Which, interesting thing to say, I'm polishing myself for you. Anyway, that was in a letter. And then he also had a letter to her that said, "I love you with all my heart. I don't want anybody else but you." And he had also promised that he was going to take her on a cruise in the Caribbean, but that never ended up happening. And finally, by 2009, Shelly was done with this horrible treatment, and she knew it just wasn't a safe environment for her daughter Lily anymore. So she left him and was granted primary custody of Lily. Tyler did have visitation on Wednesdays and then also every other weekend, but for the most part, Shelly was the one who raised her, and rightfully so. And Shelly absolutely loved being a mom, and she loved her daughter, and she would have done anything for her. She even had her name tattooed on her wrist and a lily flower tattooed on her back. And by the time that the two of them split up, they had moved to Shelbyville, Tennessee, which is in Bedford County. Tyler's family lived in Tennessee, and back when things were good between them, they wanted to be closer to them. After the divorce, though, Shelly moved to Murfreesboro in the county of Rutherford. And from what I've been able to gather, it seems like she was doing really well in life. She got a job working as an 8th grade teacher at Harris Middle School, and she was loved by all of her students and colleagues. People really only had great things to say about her, especially when it came to her as a mother. Lily was the most important person in her life, hands down, and she would have never done anything to jeopardize being around her. So, of course, when Shelly didn't come to pick up her daughter on the night of February 28th, 2011, as she was expected to, red flags quickly started to rise. It was a Monday, and going into that week, she had gotten a substitute teacher for that day, as well as for the following day as well, which was Tuesday, March 1st. And she had just moved over the weekend into a new apartment, so she wanted to finish unpacking and take care of some appointments and just personal stuff as well. And on Monday the 28th, Shelly had a handyman coming to her place around 4:30 in the afternoon, but she never made it to that appointment. And the last anyone had seen her was between 3 and 4 p.m. when she was at Tyler's house, her ex-husband, dropping off Lily. And it sounds like he was just going to watch her for a couple of hours while she was back at her apartment taking care of a few other things, and then she was going to pick her up later that night. But then she never showed up, and that was the first sign that something was really wrong. Also, her mom, Deborah, had been trying to reach her the whole afternoon, and she was really concerned that she wasn't getting a response. Deborah had actually been in town that weekend helping her move, but Monday morning, she went back to Pennsylvania, and when she couldn't get a hold of Shelly on Monday or Tuesday, she really started to panic. She even called Harris Middle School on Wednesday, and they were the ones who told her that she didn't show up that morning. And they were expecting her because, as I explained, she had a substitute for Monday and for Tuesday, but she was supposed to be there on Wednesday. So as soon as her mom hears this, she gets right in her car and she drives through the night to Tennessee. And when she gets there, she realizes that her daughter was definitely missing. And not only that, but she and everyone else learned that at 12:30 a.m. on Tuesday morning, Shelly's car was found on fire in an open field about 20 miles away. And you guys, the whole thing was torched, and it was clearly done on purpose. And because of how severe the damage was, it took the authorities a little bit of time to figure out who this car even belonged to. But once they were able to link it to Shelly, they knew that this was a much bigger situation than just arson. This was the case of a missing woman, and I hate to say this, but over the years, it has become the assumption that she is no longer alive. And of course, you can never say for sure, but nobody in Shelly's life believes that she would have just walked away. And what makes this case so frustrating is that, in my opinion, it seems very obvious. But to this day, there is unfortunately no physical evidence whatsoever, at least that we know of, to explain where she is or what happened to her. Nothing. Hence why it's all just an assumption that she is no longer alive. One thing we do know is that she definitely didn't light her own car on fire. There's just no world where she would have done that herself and just walked away from her life and her daughter. So investigators turned to the person who saw her last to see if they could get a better idea of what her movements were that day. And like I said, that person was Tyler. And right from the beginning, Tyler was not cooperative. An agent with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation has even confirmed that he hasn't cooperated in her case, and many believe that he's done a lot worse than that. Many people, and I mean many, many people, including myself, believe that he is responsible for what happened to her. And that is just my opinion. He is actually the only person who is named a person of interest in this case, and I can 100% see why. And I think I know how most of you are going to feel, because Tyler has never participated in any of the search efforts. He has never publicly expressed his concern for the mother of his child going missing, and he has been super shady about their final interaction. Just get this, okay? So within a week of Shelly going missing, her mom filed an emergency petition to get custody of Lily. Makes sense, right? So there was some legal back and forth between her and Tyler's parents, But finally, in July of 2011, there was a hearing. Now, obviously, the biggest reason that Deborah wanted to get temporary custody of Lily was to make sure that she was in a safe and loving home during this very stressful time. And with Tyler's history of abuse and drug use, and also, not to mention, his suspected involvement in her mom's disappearance and presumed murder, she understandably didn't want Lily to be around him. But a bonus piece to all of this was that Tyler would have to be asked under oath about the events of February 28th. And you guys will not believe the nerve of this piece of trash. When he was asked about this day, he pleaded the fifth somewhere between 140 and 150 times.
How did you and Shelley get along after the divorce?
We had our ups and downs.
What does that mean?
A few arguments here and there.
What were the arguments over?
On advice of counsel, I respectfully decline on the grounds of the Fifth Amendment.
On February 28th, did Shelley come to your residence with Lily?
On advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer on the grounds of the Fifth Amendment.
And I don't even know what to make of this. I can't understand Tyler's freak mindset. But the only question that he would actually answer was if they had sex that day. And he said yes.
Did you have sex with Shelley on February 28th?
Yes.
What time?
On advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer on the grounds of the Fifth Amendment.
I literally cannot understand what the point of this was. I don't get what the point of saying you plead the fifth for every other question except for this. It's almost like he was bragging. I think that was probably what it was, right? But he's such an idiot that he doesn't realize that this only makes him more suspicious, because if you did have sex, you would think, which first of all, I highly doubt, but you would think that he would want to offer a little more insight into what happened before that, afterwards, but no, he just continued to plead the fifth. Now, Lily was also asked to testify in this hearing. Mind you, she was like 6 years old, but listen to how crazy this is. It turns out that at some point in time, Tyler had given his daughter, his young daughter, a box of matches and told her to light a fire under her grandmother's bed, Shelley's mom to be specific. And apparently this was a conversation that Tyler's mom was involved with as well. Thankfully, this didn't actually come to fruition, but what the actual fuck? Asking your child to do something like this is insane on its own. Giving them the tools to do it. But you're going to start realizing that it is insane because Tyler is just fucking crazy. And thankfully, the judge realized that too. In the hearing, there was a lot of testimony about Tyler's drug use, as well as his history of verbal and physical abuse. And the judge decided that he was unfit to parent Lily due to the fact that he posed a substantial risk of harm to her. This guy, Tyler, is a real piece of shit, a real nasty, low vibrational man. Just one of the worst out there, you know? And he didn't even testify about how much he loves his daughter or say anything to try and make anyone even believe that he actually wanted custody. Because I don't think he really did. You just would think, you would hope that any father would make some kind of effort to show that he wants his child in his life, but he didn't. The court said, quote, ordinarily, a party seeking custody of his child would testify on his love for his child, his activities for his child, and his plans to acquire a home of his own in which to house his child if he was still living with his own parents. In this case, father did not testify of his love for Lily, activities for he and Lily, or future plans for he and Lily. There was testimony from someone else, though, about a time that he had road rage and was chasing Shelley and Lily from his own car, during which time he tried to swerve into them so that Shelley would have to swerve into oncoming traffic just to avoid him. There were also people who testified about his history of drug dealing and all the horrible ways he had treated Shelley. And in the end, thankfully, this all resulted in him losing custody. Deborah was awarded custody of Lily, and she moved her back home to Pennsylvania, where she was able to build a much safer, happier life. However, before she moved, investigators did bring in a child specialist to speak with her. They wanted to see if she had any memories about what happened the day her mom went missing. And turns out she definitely did. According to Lily, the two of them went over to her dad's house that day, but only her mom went inside. She was left in the car, and she remembers that her mom was upset. And then her dad ended up being the one to come out of the house and bring her inside. And when she was brought inside, he sent her straight to her room, and she was told to stay in her room and not come out. And she didn't come out. Tyler closed the door and she stayed in there. And at no point did she ever see her mom inside the house, which just confirmed that Tyler was the last person to see her. But huge shocker here, he has a different story. In a later hearing, he starts sharing slightly more information than he had before, but don't get your hopes up. It's not that much. According to Tyler, he confirmed that Shelley came by his place on that Monday, the 28th, between 3 and 4 o'clock. He also agreed that she was upset and came into the house. He claimed that she was worried that her new boyfriend was cheating on her, but after an hour of talking, he said that she left his house to go run errands and take care of that appointment with the handyman. He also said that she was supposed to come pick Lily up around 10 p.m., but obviously that never happened. Apparently he texted and called her, but the only message he received was a response at 7 p.m. that said, "I will, babe." We don't know what that means. We don't know if that was her. And that's it. That's all he said. And to my understanding, he has not been questioned since. In fact, a private investigator, Kevin Keel, has been looking into her disappearance, and he doesn't believe Tyler has ever truly been interviewed in depth. And sadly, no evidence has turned up to push her case forward. Multiple searches have been conducted to try and locate Shelley. They even brought in the assistance of the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, but nothing has panned out so far. A mobile crime lab went to Tyler's house 3 days after she disappeared, but it doesn't sound like anything was found there. He did move out of his house and in with his parents that day, though, which isn't a crime, but definitely weird. There was a tip about a year and a half in that brought a huge team of law enforcement to a rail yard in Cohen, Tennessee, but in the end, that didn't turn up any leads. Tyler's neighbor's van was even seized and searched, but that also came up empty. Or at least if anything was found, it hasn't been mentioned. One thing we do know is that her phone last pinged around 7:30 p.m. in the area of Beech Grove, Tennessee. I believe that's about 15 to 20 minutes away from Tyler's place, and there's just no reason that she would have gone there voluntarily. So that's been a confusing piece of this puzzle. And then the only other thing that I could find has been this uncovered bit of surveillance camera footage that captured Tyler at a gas station 10 days after Shelley went missing. It was a few miles away from his house. I wasn't able to figure out exactly where, but he is seen pulling up in his red truck, and then he stopped at the dumpster for like 5 to 10 minutes. Unfortunately, that footage has not been released, but I don't know, you guys. Can you think of a reason why anyone would really need to spend 5 to 10 minutes hanging out at a gas station dumpster? This is absolutely just one of those cases where there are a lot of smaller yet suspicious things that suggest what happened, but because she hasn't been found, there hasn't been any concrete evidence. Therefore, justice has had to wait. And speaking of suspicious, I have to know your thoughts on this one. This is also one of the dumbest things I have heard in any of these cases, one of the biggest self-reports possible. And still, we don't get a lot from it, which is maddening. But oh my God, what a dummy. So while the custody dispute was still in progress, Tyler butt-dialed 911. How you do this, I don't know. I've thought maybe he had, I do not know. I cannot figure out how he butt-dialed 911. How do you do that? Oh my God. But anyway, he was with his dad, and they must have been working with like power tools or something, because it's hard to hear at certain points, but it's about a 20-minute call. Yeah, he called 911 and talked for 20 minutes. And only a little bit of the audio has been released. Thankfully, they recorded the whole thing. But you can hear him talk about Shelley's disappearance in the part that has been released. He doesn't admit to doing anything to her, but he makes references to potential evidence that investigators may have against him, specifically that they have witnesses who saw him walking in the middle of the road on the night her car was found in flames.
Hello? I think it's just not Debbie. I think it's the lawyer, the girl, Debbie, the judge, the DA, and both of 2 or 3 county sheriffs in the TBI. Yep. And they know that I'm not going anywhere right now because I don't have Lily. They can't prove nothing. And they know that there's a better chance of me leaving with Lily. They've done their job. They trampled all over your rights. They did everything humanly possible. The situation as it was. Been here, okay, you had your fun, boys. Somebody's going to pay for this. I already got a bunch of people lined up. I keep hearing through the grapevine through Jason and Renee's mom and sister. Oh, they got people seeing me leave that night. Oh, they seen Charlie's car going down the road that night. He wasn't driving. Oh, somebody seen me walking down the road in the middle of the night. Let's get a couple more of those people running the station.
Then his dumbass realizes that he had just called 911 and yapped for 20 minutes. So he's even... God, he is so stupid. He then calls back to ask specifically if that call had been recorded. I mean, just make yourself look any more suspicious, Tyler, please.
What's your name? This is Tyler Mook.
Okay.
Did you get a call from this number here a couple minutes ago?
Yes, we had an open line from it.
What happens on that open line? Does it get recorded and stuff like that?
Hang on just a second, sir.
The fact that this dude is concerned about the call being recorded and is stupid enough to call back and get that on record as well says a lot, if you ask me. And the frustrating thing with this case is that so many people believe, including myself, that the simplest explanation here is the most likely answer. Isn't that called Occam's razor or whatever? At the end of the day, you guys, there isn't direct evidence linking Tyler to Shelly's disappearance, but he was the last person to see her, and he had a history of violence against her. And that private investigator that I briefly mentioned said that he fully believes that Tyler is responsible and that his motive was simply, if I can't have her, nobody can. We know that she had a boyfriend, so he believes that it's possible that she said something about him that upset Tyler. Of course, that's alleged, but it's a theory, and in my opinion, it's a good one. And before you ask, I'm sure some of you are wondering, her boyfriend and the handyman as well were both ruled out as suspects. Tyler's possible involvement seems the most likely to myself and to many others, although I have to be very clear here, that is still alleged. Although we do know that he is capable, at the very least, of attempted murder. Let me explain. This is absolutely wild. But after he lost custody, Tyler ended up moving to Florida. And I don't know this for sure, but it sounds like he made this move to go and start a new, fresh life where people didn't know him as the guy who is suspected of making his ex-wife disappear. Well, while he's there, he ends up dating this woman named Robin, and for a while, things were going well. She was a single mom with a young daughter, and her impression was that she and Tyler were on a path towards marriage. A friend had introduced them, and apparently they got really serious really fast. But then Robin realized that Tyler wasn't who he said he was. He told her his last name was Cook, but then one day, when he took her on his new boat, she saw that the name of the boat was Mook Racing. And when she asked him about it, he said that Mook was his real last name, and that he had just been kidding about it being Cook this entire time. So naturally, she Googles his ass, and obviously, everything with Shelly came up. Can you imagine how scary this would have been for Robin to find out that the guy that you've been dating, the guy that you think you want to marry, has been lying about his last name, and far worse than that, he is suspected of making his ex-wife disappear? Well, Robin said that she was super freaked out, especially considering the fact that she and Shelly kind of look similar. And long story short, she said that she tried to break up with him, but he smooth-talked his way into convincing her to stay. He gave her some BS story that Shelly wasn't missing. She just ran away overseas to be with the guy that she was dating. And Tyler could be incredibly convincing, I guess. But his true colors did eventually show. It was 2014, and one day, Robin, Tyler, Tyler's brother Andrew, and Andrew's girlfriend all decided to go for a little boat ride. Robin happened to be running late though, which really pissed Tyler off. So much so that when she finally got there and got on the boat, he started speeding off. They were at Indian River Lagoon, which of course, like many areas, has no wake zones for certain areas with a lot of manatees. But Tyler was just plowing through these with absolutely no regard. And as I think anyone would do, Robin told him that he needed to slow down. Well, her just telling him to slow down triggered Tyler enough that he stopped the boat. He then grabbed Robin super aggressively. And I guess she was trying to call her mom at the time, so he ripped her phone away from her, threw it, and then he grabbed her sunglasses off her head, threw those, and then threw her into the water. Then after that, he jumps into the water as well, and he starts trying to drown her. Quite literally, he is trying to drown her. At one point, she explains that he is holding her upside down in the water. And she, is fully freaking out. And he would have been successful at drowning her if his brother didn't jump in the water and save her. Andrew said that he put Tyler in a chokehold, which gave Robin the chance to swim away. She then swam to a nearby boat where these two guys managed to pull her aboard. And they actually remembered that Tyler was screaming at them and looked visibly pissed. And then they got out of there as quickly as possible to keep Robin safe. And coincidentally, there happened to be a cop right where they boated to, and they managed to arrest Tyler that afternoon on a battery charge. However, that charge was upgraded shortly after this to attempted first-degree murder. And what's interesting is Robin was visited by detectives from Tennessee, and we don't know what was said, but it's believed that that's what prompted them to upgrade these charges. Now, as for Tyler's trial for this incident, that happened in the beginning of March of 2016, and it only lasted for a few days, but there were definitely a lot of wild moments and undeniably damning testimony. The jury heard from Tyler's own brother, Andrew, and also Andrew's girlfriend, and from Robin herself, all of whom retold the horrifying events of that day as he attempted to take Robin's life. And Andrew made it clear that he didn't want to testify against his brother, but he was ordered by the court to do so. And he described not only what he witnessed, but about how he had to put his own brother in a chokehold to stop him. And when Andrew's girlfriend testified, she said she specifically remembered hearing Tyler say, "Nobody disrespects me in front of my family. I'll kill her." And then, of course, Robin testified that day as well about how Tyler had tried to kill her. She described the fear that she felt when he threw her into the water and how she fought to try and stay alive as he continuously tried to push her under. And obviously, there was no denying that he did this. The argument here was over his intent. Of course, in the prosecution's eyes, his intention was to kill her, which I think that's most of our perspective, right? And then in the eyes of the defense, they said, sure, Tyler was mad, but he wasn't trying to kill her that day. They argued that because Robin never needed mouth to mouth and had the capacity to yell and swim to another boat, that this wasn't as brutal of an attack as she had claimed it was. But in the end, though, thank God, the jury found him guilty. Not of attempted first-degree murder, though, but attempted second-degree instead. And I thought this was really sweet and also very powerful, but Shelley's family was actually there in support of Robin. And thankfully, Tyler was given a pretty hefty prison sentence of 12 years. And of course, I think most people, including myself, believe he deserves much more, but I guess 12 is better than nothing. And I could see it going the other way where he could have easily just gotten away with this without really serving any time at all, or literally no time at all. Now, as for Shelley's case, I wish I had better news for you guys, but it seems to still just be at a standstill. Some people believe his family knows something and they're just protecting him. Others believe they don't know anything. But that being said, almost nobody in Tyler's life has spoken publicly to defend him. In my opinion, that says a lot. He does have one friend, Erica, who does seem to believe that he is innocent, or at the very least, she is waiting to make a judgment until there's an actual arrest. But it's like, girl, really? She says that Tyler has always been incredibly thoughtful towards her and her family, and it's hard for her to think he would be capable of this. And girl, I don't know you. I don't want to judge. I know it is hard to picture someone that has been nice to you could be possibly involved in something like this, but it does happen. And I gotta say, it sounds a bit silly the way you're talking. We all know, including you, that he is capable of trying to kill someone. He went to jail for 12 years for that. So let's do the math here. If he's capable of trying and all the, facts we do have on this case sort of line up a certain way, who is to say that he isn't capable of doing? And you cannot forget that at the end of the day, the only reason that Robin is still alive most likely is because Tyler was stopped. As of 2017, Tennessee District Attorney Robert Carter said, quote, "I don't think there's any doubt a crime has been committed. The issue now is, can we gather enough information, put it together to get beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law? This is a very active case. It's being worked extremely hard. And man, I really hope so." He also says they are committed to getting justice, but they don't want to rush it. Now, of course, there is some sense of relief for everyone considering Tyler is in jail, but he's already 9 years into a 12-year sentence, meaning in a couple of years, he could be free, most likely will. He did try to appeal his sentence, of course, in 2020. Thankfully, that was denied. And of course, we don't know for sure if he's guilty of making Shelly disappear, but man, it would be really amazing if justice came in the next 3 years before he's released so that her family can finally get peace. Because if it was him, and big if there, of course, then he would never have the chance to be free again. And as a reminder, he still remains the only person of interest in this case. But what's interesting is it has been speculated that maybe someone else could have been involved, because that private investigator I mentioned earlier made a good point that if it was Tyler who did this and he was the one who burned her car, he would have needed help getting home because it was about 20 minutes away from his house where the car was burned. So someone likely would have had to pick him up, right? And also, who was watching Lily? Not that I'd be shocked if he left Lily home alone. Honestly, that's kind of my guess. But if he did walk 20 miles home, I would really hope that someone was at the house watching Lily during that. But if you think back to that 911 butt dial, he said that investigators have witnesses who saw him walking in the middle of the road that night. So that makes you think, was he really walking all the way home, or was he walking to a certain point, someone picked him up? I don't know. That call alone just says so much about his possible involvement, in my opinion. I don't know. I just wonder if there's more to this. And according to the NamUs website, there is a $20,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of Shelly's killer. And I truly hope that we don't have to wait 14 more years for answers. Currently, Shelly would be 39 years old. She is 5'7". She weighed approximately 160 pounds, had blonde hair and hazel eyes, as well as 2 tattoos, one on her wrist that said Liliana, and a lily flower with a stem going down her back. If you have any information at all on her disappearance, please contact the TBI at 1-800-824-3463. Before I go, I did want to let you know that her daughter appears to be doing really well in life. She's an all-star volleyball athlete and received a full ride scholarship to play in college. And I have to say, she is the spitting image of her mother. Truly so beautiful. And Lily, if you happen to see this, I just wanted to send you my best and say that I am just so sorry for everything that you have been through. The fact that you have been able to, do so well at a young age in your life after, going through the experience you have and not having answers or justice to this day, it must be incredibly painful. I also wanted to say that my team over at Higher Hope is going to be reaching out to you. We would love to get you a Hope grant if that can help you in any way. And hopefully we can be in touch and talk soon. And man, do I hate ending episodes this way with no ending to it all, no justice, no answers. It's incredibly frustrating, but these are, the cases that really need the coverage. So thank you all for tuning into this episode. I really appreciate it. I'm sure Shelly's loved ones do as well. But that is going to be it for me today, guys. I also wanted to let you know that I will not be here next week. I am going on a little baby moon with my husband because I am now 20 weeks along. I can't believe it. I'm halfway through this pregnancy. Also, if you didn't hear the news, I posted it to Instagram, but if you don't follow me, I'm having a little boy and I'm very excited. I cannot believe I'm actually getting to be a mother of a boy. So yeah, I'm just really, really, really thankful and, going to take some time to reflect on, this experience and what's coming next, and just spend some quality time with my husband before we welcome another one into the chaos. But yeah, I'm so excited. And thank you guys for all your support. It just means the world to me. You have no idea. I feel very, very lucky to have just such an amazing audience who has been so kind to me during, both my pregnancies. You guys are the best. But yeah, that's it for me today, guys. I hope you're having a good one, and I will see you next time. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of True Crime with Kendall Ray. Thank you so much for joining me today. And if you're new to the show, then welcome. I'm so happy to have you here, and make sure to click subscribe so that you never miss an upload from me. So you guys, today we're getting into a case that happened 18 years ago, but it is just as painful today as it was back then. We're going to be talking about the 2007 murder of Kelsey Smith. And one of the most upsetting parts about this case is the fact that Kelsey had literally just graduated high school, and her future was bright, and it was in arm's reach, and it was all just ripped from her and her family out of nowhere. But speaking of her family, I just have to say right off the bat, they are such amazing people, and the way that they describe her, the love that they had for her, and everything that they have done since she died is what truly inspired me to even talk about her case today, because I think the work that they have done since and the way that they have kept her memory alive needs to be highlighted. I also just wanted to mention right off the bat, in case Kelsey's family sees the intro of this episode and maybe doesn't watch the entire thing, that me and my team over at Higher Hope would love to offer you all a grant. I'll explain, but Kelsey's family also has a foundation, and we would love to help support your mission in any way we can. Let's go ahead and get into Kelsey's case. And I'm happy that I do have a lot to tell you about Kelsey. There's a lot of information available about the wonderful person that she was. On May 3rd, 1989, Kelsey Ann Smith was born. Her parents, Greg and Missy, were just over the moon excited to welcome her into this world, and at the time, she was their youngest. She had 2 older sisters, and her oldest was actually from her mom's first marriage, and then after she was born, they went on to have 2 more kids, making Kelsey the middle of 5. And growing up, she used to joke that she had middle child syndrome. And it sounds like from the time that she was young, she was always quite the little explorer and very curious. And her parents said that she was also very inquisitive, and she earned herself the nickname No-No, which I love. And I'm sure you can guess why. It's because her parents were always telling her, no. She also got the nickname Blueberry because of how much she loved the color blue. And for my YouTube watchers, that's why we have the blue background today for Kelsey. And although she was born in Charleston, South Carolina, their whole family ended up moving to Overland Park, Kansas when she was 9 after Greg got out of the Navy. And her father, Greg, was actually originally from there, so he was very excited to move his family back to his home turf, you could say. And he was especially excited because this part of Kansas is known to be very, very safe. I guess it's like 25 minutes south of Kansas City, and it's a, very residential, family-friendly community. And a friend of mine, actually, who lives in Kansas, is familiar with the area, and she said it's known to be very safe. Of course, I feel like this is such a cliche thing to say in true crime because no area is free of crime. Something can happen anywhere, but generally speaking, if you're raising a family, this would be a great place to do it. In fact, at least from my understanding, it's got some of the best public schools in the entire state. And Kelsey attended one of those schools. She went to Shawnee Mission West and absolutely thrived there. She was a dedicated member of the marching band where she played clarinet. And she also sang in the choir and was part of the theater program. And she was super talented at all of those things. Plus, she also ran track. She kept up good grades. And on top of it all, had a thriving social life. Her dad said that for whatever reason, their house was the one that all of her friends liked to come to. So on any given day, there would typically be a group of girls there watching TV or playing games. And it really doesn't surprise me that she had such a great group of friends. I think Kelsey is a good example of your vibe attracts your tribe. People say that she was funny, she was kind, responsible, always loved exploring, and that she just had the biggest heart. And I love this specifically. They said that she was scrubbed in sunshine. That's how happy of a person she was. Not to mention the fact that she was someone who could turn any stranger into a friend and was never afraid to try something new. I mean, like I've said, she had a very funny side to her, and she really liked to grind her mom's gears, tease her a little bit. And I guess her mom, Missy, could not stand when people burped. So Kelsey loved to chug soda and then let out these massive burps just to get on her nerves. But other than that, and obviously that didn't cause actual problems for her parents, but it seems like overall, Kelsey was not the type of child that her parents had to worry about, or not the type of teenager that her parents had to worry about, which is pretty rare for a teenager in general. It was so nice for them that she had done so well in school and that they could trust her. She never caused issues, never really got into trouble. And so they were all really excited about the idea of her going off to college. So she graduated from high school on May 24th of 2007. And her plan was to go to Kansas State University, which is only about 2 hours away. And she was going to study veterinary medicine. She also had plans of joining the marching band alongside her sister. But until then, she had, the final summer at home to look forward to. And this is such a special time in so many people's lives. And that summer, she planned on spending a lot of time with her boyfriend, John. By June of 2007, Kelsey had been dating her boyfriend, John, for 6 months. And it was a very serious 6 months for them. And everyone around them knew it. Kelsey's older sister, Stevie, said that the two of them were so in love that it was almost annoyingly cute. Her whole family was just convinced that they were going to end up together one day. And you can just tell in these photos how much the two of them truly care for each other. Especially this one picture of them smiling. They both just look so happy and comfortable with each other. And God, it's just heartbreaking to look at now. And the night of Saturday, June 2nd, they had plans to go and celebrate their 6-month anniversary, which of course is a big deal at that age. I remember Josh and I celebrating our 6-month anniversary in high school. And, you got to celebrate these little milestones in young relationships. So their plan was to meet up around 7:30. And first they were going to go to a friend's pool party. And then after that, they were just going to go get dinner. But before all of that, Kelsey wanted to make a quick run over to Target to grab a gift for him. Earlier in the day, she had gone to the Old Shawnee Days Summer Festival with her dad, and it just so happened that 6:30-ish was when she had time to go to Target. Greg said she even left and then came home really quickly because she forgot a CD that she wanted to listen to on her way there. So she grabbed that. She told her dad she loved him and that she'd see him when she came home. And little did Greg know this would actually be the last time he saw his daughter. And I'm just so happy that they at least got to spend that day together doing something fun and memorable. Now, as far as her mom goes, she was actually on her way home from a wedding in Iowa, so she wasn't there when Kelsey left. But they did end up talking on the phone, thankfully. So Kelsey arrived at the Target by Oak Park Mall at 6:55 p.m. And within just a minute of arriving, she called her mom to ask where she could find the boxes for part of her gift. It sounds like she was planning to make him a scrapbook, but she had gone to Target looking for wrapping paper as well, and also a box for him so that he could store his cards and letters, which is a really sweet and thoughtful gift. So Missy was talking her through that while Kelsey walked around and grabbed everything she needed. They eventually hung up, and her mom did get the chance to tell her that she loved her and that she would see her when she got home. But Kelsey never made it home that night. Right around 7:30 p.m., John showed up at her place to pick her up as planned for their 6-month anniversary, and he had also purchased a gift for her. That night, he was planning to give her a promise ring. But when he got there, she wasn't back yet. And at first, this wasn't a huge deal. They thought maybe she was running a little late. But then 30 minutes went by, and soon Greg and also her sister Lindsay started to get concerned. By this point, Kelsey had been gone for over an hour, and this was not the be at Target for more than an hour kind of trip. This was a quick stop at Target, not to mention the fact that Greg had this rule where his kids would have to call them whenever they were out and going from place to place. That way someone always knew where you were. And Kelsey was responsible about this. This was very unlike her. And keep in mind, Greg worked in law enforcement for a local community college, so he liked to be extra cautious. And so, knowing all of that, they were very concerned when Kelsey didn't come home and wasn't answering their calls and texts. And once Missy heard what was going on from her daughter, Lindsay, she told her that they needed to call the police. And that's exactly what Greg did. And since he worked in law enforcement, he was making several calls to a few different departments, trying to see if she had gotten into an accident or maybe she had been pulled over in some kind of, traffic violation. And her sisters were also calling different emergency rooms, trying to see if Kelsey had possibly been brought in, but nothing came out of it. So that's when Lindsay and John just decided to go to Target and see if they could find her. They thought maybe she was locked out of her car, maybe her phone died or was somehow in the car, or she lost her phone, something like that. Or maybe she didn't find what she needed at Target, so she had decided to go to the mall looking for a different gift. But when they pulled into the Target parking lot, neither Kelsey or her car were there. And that's when they, of course, really started panicking. So they continued kind of just driving around the area, hoping they would find her. And Greg's parents also lived in the area, so they started driving around looking for her too, and they were actually the ones that found her car. Turns out it had been parked in the Macy's parking lot, which was on the other side of the mall. The scary part, though, was that Kelsey was still nowhere to be found. And as soon as Greg got the call from Lindsay that it was found, he remembers very sternly telling her that absolutely no one could touch it. I guess John wanted to look inside, understandably, but Greg was like, I don't care what you have to do. I don't care if you have to tackle him. Do not let him go near it. He knew that this was a crime scene, and he immediately called 911 to report what they had found. And by 11 o'clock that night, that Macy's parking lot became the launching point for the investigation into Kelsey's disappearance. So as soon as law enforcement arrived, they started processing her vehicle right away. And there were several things that just jumped out at them off the bat. And one of those things was that there was something, possibly a piece of clothing or fabric, that was hanging out of the trunk. And of course, Kelsey is a teenager. She didn't keep her car super clean, but Greg said that she would have never left something just hanging out like that. And of course, he and Missy worried that maybe she was in the trunk. Maybe it was a piece of her clothing hanging out. Missy was back in town by this point, so she was with them at the scene, and they had to open up the trunk. And Greg said that he had his hands over his eyes, and both of them just held their breath as it was being opened, but it was empty. There were, however, some frightening clues in the passenger side of her car. That's where they found her keys, her purse, as well as the items that she had just purchased at Target. But what they didn't find was her cell phone or any signs of a struggle, which made this that much more confusing. And for her parents, it made it that much more terrifying because, as I mentioned, Kelsey had just graduated from high school, literally 9 days earlier. And for her graduation present, her parents had gotten her a Coach bag. This was a big deal. Normally, they didn't give out big gifts, so she was super excited and grateful to have this. This Coach purse was a prized possession of hers, so to see it just left in the car was even more proof that something terrible had to have happened. And it is absolutely gut-wrenching to hear Greg talk about his daughter's case in general in any interviews that he's done, because he talks about how as all of this was happening, he almost had to go into cop mode as opposed to dad mode because it was just too emotional to think about this so personally. As an officer, he knew all of the signs were pointing to something bad having happened. So looking at it like a cop allowed him to keep it together in a way that he knew he had to, and he knew he couldn't if he looked at it through the lens of Kelsey's dad. And as some of us can only thankfully imagine, that night and every day following was truly a living nightmare, just torture for all of them. And they, through all of that, stayed as strong as they could. And they were just determined to do whatever they possibly could to try and find her. So while investigators brought the car in to be forensically processed, Missy and Greg agreed to go into the station for questioning. And they, of course, wanted to get this over as quickly as possible so that investigators could move on to finding the true person responsible. And it did not take long at all for the two of them to be cleared. So next, investigators turned their attention to John, who they definitely didn't go easy on. They asked him a series of very hard questions, often rephrasing the same question in different ways to see if he, changed his answers. But just like with her parents, it did not take long for them to realize he had absolutely nothing to do with this either. Plus, He also had an alibi for the time that she was missing, so he was free to go. And with a million questions still looming at this point, this is when everyone turned their attention to Kelsey's cell phone. Because she was missing and her phone was also missing, her family and law enforcement thought it was possible she had it with her. And John had actually mentioned that his uncle worked for Sprint and that these companies can ping cell phones in order to get an estimate of their location. So that night, Missy and Greg start calling Verizon and asking if they could ping the location of Kelsey's phone. And Verizon said no. And I kid you not, Missy was on the phone with different associates at Verizon for a long time, just pleading with them to help because her child is missing. And it didn't matter who she spoke to, the answer was still the same. No. All they told her over and over was that she could go online onto their website and pull up her call activity, her call log. But they didn't need her call activity. They needed her location history. And Missy says that trying to get them to release these records was one of the most maddening things that she has ever experienced in her life. And I can absolutely see why. To be dealing with something like that during one of the worst moments of your life, probably the worst, is just torture. Her daughter is missing, and these people hold the key to potentially being able to find her, and they just won't do it. They don't seem to care. Honestly, I would just be beyond myself livid. My blood is boiling just thinking about what they put her through. And what's outrageous too is the Overland Park Police Department also had been calling Verizon asking for the location data of her cell phone pings, and they wouldn't give it to them either. They needed a court order. But of course, that's not something that you can just obtain at the drop of a hat. But anyway, while they were waiting for that, Kelsey's family's efforts really became focused on the search. And by the morning of Sunday, June 3rd, their house practically had turned into its own mini command center. Between her parents, her siblings, her friends, and community members, there was a big group of people absolutely determined to bring her home. And with Greg's knowledge, he helped strategize how they were going to find her. It started off with getting flyers printed, and then hundreds of people started passing them out and performing their very own grid search. And by Monday, there were over 400 volunteers searching for her. And Greg was told after the fact that by the time that the police started their search, there was not a single person that they spoke to that hadn't already heard what was going on. That's how thorough they were. They called themselves Kelsey's Army, and for good reason. And meanwhile, Greg and Missy gave as many media interviews as they possibly could, knowing that it would also help spread the word. And during this time, Missy says that they weren't sleeping or eating because of the agony they felt, wondering if their child was sleeping or eating. And Greg said that it physically hurt to breathe because he was in so much pain. But nothing was going to stop them from finding her, or at least getting answers. And I'm grateful to say that the entire investigative team that was led by Bob Miller were just as determined. The morning after Kelsey went missing, a team of law enforcement officers went over to Target to see if they could obtain any security camera footage. And thankfully, I feel like I rarely get to say this in cases, but they had hours of footage from over 40 different cameras. And someone from Target's National Investigation Center even came in to try and help them get everything that they needed. And when they watched it, they were able to piece her movements together quite easily. They could see her entering the store at 6:55 p.m., and then she proceeded to walk through the aisles. They then watched as she went to the register at 7:05, and by 7:09, she was seen leaving. Now, when it came to the parking lot, that footage, unfortunately, was especially low quality. Not only because we're talking about 2007 technology, but also Kelsey's car wasn't parked close to the camera. But based on what they could see, it looked like she put her items in the passenger side of the car and walked to the driver's side where she got in and drove away. Which honestly kind of stunned everyone because at first pass, they didn't see anything to indicate that she was ever in danger. And Detective Miller even said that he was expecting to see an abduction happen right there on tape, but that was not what they were looking at. So that left everyone wondering, where was Kelsey and why was her car left in the Macy's parking lot? And to answer that question, they reached out to Macy's, hoping that they might have some surveillance footage as well. Before they managed to get that, though, they happened to get a tip saying that someone resembling Kelsey had just been spotted at a nearby restaurant. And everyone immediately turned their attention to this lead, and Greg and Missy were even brought there to see if it was her. And unfortunately, by the time they had gotten there, the girl was gone. And after they watched the surveillance footage at the restaurant, they realized that it was not even her. But after that, they refocused their attention back to Macy's because they did have security footage. And that footage ended up being very, very useful. It was dark and it wasn't the best quality, but they could see that at 9:17 p.m., Kelsey's car was driven into the parking lot. And then a man wearing a white shirt and dark shorts could be seen exiting the car and walking away from the camera. And even though it was clearly not Kelsey, it wasn't obvious who it was. But investigators figured there had to be some sort of explanation for this person bringing her car back to the mall area. I mean, what had happened here? So that's when they decided they needed to give the Target footage a closer look. And I mean closer look, because the first time they had viewed it, they were watching it on like a 15-inch screen. This time, though, they brought it into the command center and they projected it on a massive wall so that they could really get a good look at it. And they brought in a ton more people, so there were, a greater number of eyes, and that would guarantee that nothing would be missed. And when they watched it back again, they finally saw it. As Kelsey was in the parking lot, about to get into the driver's side of her Buick, a flash ran across the top part of the video. And you guys, it is so subtle and quick that you would definitely miss it if you blinked. It is hard to see at first. But that flash was a person wearing a white shirt and dark shorts, just like the guy seen in the Macy's footage. And they say that you could have heard a pin drop in the room because it was so silent when everyone realized what they were actually seeing. And that wasn't the end of it either. When they began going through the footage from the inside of the store, they realized that a man matching the same description could be seen following Kelsey from aisle to aisle. It was very clear that he wasn't shopping for anything. He was stalking her, making sure to stay close, but not close enough that she would notice him. And this footage, oh man, it is just chilling. He just seems so calm. And somehow they just didn't notice this the first time around. And that's likely because the two of them never had interacted. He left the store before she did, and they were able to see that when Kelsey started approaching the register, this strange man just beelined it out of Target. And thankfully, the camera that faces the exit was able to get a pretty clear shot of his face. And on top of that, they were able to go back through the additional parking lot footage, and they managed to find a guy matching his description driving into the parking lot only a minute after Kelsey first arrived. He was in a dark blue Chevy, which had also been captured driving around the backside of the store. They'd even captured footage of him driving out of the Target parking lot later that night, not long after the guy matching his description was seen dropping off Kelsey's car at Macy's. So of course, they've pieced together at this point that this is all likely the same person. And now they not only know what he looks like, but they know what kind of car he drives. And after Greg and Missy reviewed these tapes and confirmed they didn't recognize who he was, his photo and description were released to the media. And right away, there were tons of tips. I read that over 2,000 people called in. And luckily, 3 of those tips pointed them in the right direction. And these tips came from Overland Park residents who said that they thought the guy on their TV screen was their neighbor, 26-year-old Edwin Hall. And just FYI, that is the last time that I'm going to say his name in this episode. Kelsey's parents have chosen not to acknowledge this monster, and I'm going to follow their lead on that. I think that's awesome. I will, of course, tell you what you need to know about him, but I'm not going to get into his whole history. It's not worth our time or breath. So anyway, investigators looked his ass up, and they realized that he both matched the physical description and he also drove a blue Chevy. So all this information was good enough for them to take a closer look at him. And they even sent Kelsey's computer to a Missouri crime lab to see if there was any evidence that the two of them knew each other. But he was a complete stranger. And before investigators were even able to send a team out to talk to him, they got a phone call from a lawyer saying that he was representing this guy and that he wanted to talk. So they ended up sending a few officers to his house to go get eyes on him. Come to find out, he, his wife, and their kid were packing boxes into his truck. Now, I don't think their initial plan was to talk to him, but once they saw him clearly trying to leave, they knew they had to intervene, and ultimately he was asked to come into the station. Right away, though, they realized that he wasn't going to tell them anything. He and his lawyer sat there for quite a while, and the whole time he sits there quite literally with his nose up at them, and you can tell he just thinks he's the smartest person in the room. And apparently, he even wanted them to tell him what evidence they found, which obviously that's not the way these things work, buddy. So they finally got him to talk a little. And in his explanation, he said, sure, he was at Target on the surveillance video, but he denied having anything to do with Kelsey's disappearance. And this is disgusting, but he even told them that he remembered seeing her because he thought she had nice legs. He even tried to explain the cuts and scrapes on his hands as injuries that he got from doing yard work. And honestly, it sounds like he was sort of just mocking them the whole time, like not taking it seriously at all, making a joke out of the whole thing. And investigators sort of used that to their advantage. They were like, okay, hey, if you're so confident that you didn't do this, if you're so certain that you are innocent, let's just get some samples of your DNA, let's rule you out. And he agreed. He gave them fingerprints and DNA swabs, which were immediately sent to the crime lab for testing. And I also learned that his wife brought in a bag that contained the clothes he was wearing that day. And that also got sent out for testing. And within only a few hours, they got a hit. His thumbprint was a match to the thumbprint that they'd already found on the seatbelt buckle in her car. And because of that, 4 days after Kelsey went missing, an arrest was finally made. And I should probably specify too that he was arrested for murder because just about an hour before he was brought in for questioning, Kelsey's remains were found. Like I explained earlier, this entire time, everyone had been trying to get Verizon to turn over her cell records, including half a dozen police officers. But for days, Verizon wouldn't comply because of privacy concerns. And they later said that it was something to do with the fact that they were saying ping instead of locate, and that had something to do with it, which in my opinion doesn't make any sense to me. I don't really understand cell phone companies, cell phone data, and how all of that works, but ping, location, seems like a stupid detail to have not given this crucial data to law enforcement and to a family who needs it. Anyway, though, finally, the FBI steps in. And of course, they were able to retrieve those records from Verizon, which showed the movements of Kelsey's phone after she left Target. And they were able to trace her driving along Highway 435 with a final ping 20 miles away at Longview Lake in Missouri. Now, sources vary on whether this information came in late at night on June 5th or early morning on June 6th, but bottom line is, it only took 45 minutes of searching that area for her remains to be found. And I'll warn you, this is very graphic and very upsetting, but Kelsey was found about 150 feet deep into the woods, and she was naked under some sticks and leaves with her own belt around her neck. The shorts and pink tank top that she was wearing were found not far from her body, and there were bleach stains on them, suggesting that her killer attempted to hide traces of his DNA. An autopsy later confirmed that she had been strangled and that her killer sexually assaulted her. She also had defensive wounds on her hands, which tells us that she likely put up one hell of a fight. And when it came to notifying her family, Greg and Missy knew that bad news was coming. They had received a call from the police captain saying that he needed to meet with them in person to give them some news. Greg even asked him if they needed to brace for what he was about to say, and he said yes, they needed to brace. So they sat at the end of their driveway, which was where they learned the news that Kelsey had not been found alive. Missy remembers yelling out, "Not my Kels," and Greg said that he had to physically hold her up. They then had to break the horrific news to Stevie and Lindsay, who had just pulled up to the house, and they were hit just as deeply by their sister's death. And what's horrible is their younger siblings were inside the house, and they actually saw it on the news on TV. And as for John, he was on his way to Longview Lake that morning to help search for her. But he was turned away when he got there, only to learn about her death on the radio. Kelsey's murder was clearly a loss that everyone felt, and her absence is still very much felt to this day. But I am grateful to be able to say, at the very least, that justice was swift in her case. And once her killer was arrested, he was ultimately charged with kidnapping, rape, sodomy, and capital murder. And then the following year, he pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty. And part of that plea included confessing to everything he did. And the details, you guys, are nothing short of gut-wrenching. I mean, it's just horrible. He is truly a sick, disgusting, foul, worthless monster, waste of a human life. And also, this freak had a history of violence. Turns out he went to juvie as a kid for trying to stab his adopted sister with a knife. And at one point, he'd also been charged for having a sexual relationship with a 14-year-old. But this plea agreement also said that those charges would be dropped. But anyway, back to Kelsey's case. We learned a lot about what happened. He ended up explaining that after spending the morning at home, he went out that afternoon and dined alone at a Mexican restaurant close to the mall. He confirmed he ate there without paying the bill and then went to Dillard's to shop for gifts for his wife. Then he decided to go to Target, where his intention was to look for a victim, and Kelsey just so happened to cross his path. He said that he thought she had nice legs and looked like a 12-year-old. And once he noticed that she was alone, he knew that she was the one. So, like a predator stalking his prey, he followed her around the store until she finally started walking towards the checkout line. And that's when he says he went to his car to grab his BB gun, which looked a lot like a real firearm. And then as she was getting into her car, he said he ran up on her, threatened that he would shoot her unless she started driving. So Kelsey complied, and he made her drive to Longview Lake, where he committed acts against her that truly, I don't think, need to be said. I mean, you can tell what happened from his charges. And then afterwards, he drove her car to the Macy's parking lot where he dumped it, and then he proceeded to go back to his car and drive home. And apparently there was even a couple who saw him the next day emerging from the woods carrying a blue duffel bag, and they said that he was acting super paranoid, probably because he had just poured bleach on her clothes to try and conceal evidence. With or without his confession, though, evidence doesn't lie, and apparently they had 119 pieces of evidence that linked him to her murder, including additional DNA of his on her steering wheel, as well as on the muzzle of his BB gun. And her DNA was also found on his clothing as well. And I am really happy to say that this monster was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, so he will rot there for the rest of his miserable life where he belongs. But that's enough about him and what he did to her. That's not what her family wants people to remember. They want people to remember the 18 incredible years of life that Kelsey lived and the impact that she made in such a short amount of time. Greg says that a quote that they have really lived by has been, "It's not the years in your life that count, it's the life in your years." And that was even put on her headstone. And I think it's a really amazing way for them to describe the 18 years of life that she had. And I just loved hearing about how much their community really came together to support them after she passed. Her funeral was held at the Church of Resurrection in Overland Park, and hundreds of people showed up to pay their respects. People literally waited in line for hours and stayed well past midnight. And surprisingly, Kelsey had actually talked to John about what she wanted her funeral to be like one day. Obviously, not knowing it would be so soon, of course, but she said she wanted it to focus on who she was and for people to not be sad about her passing. And this detail is so heart-shattering, but also so beautiful at the same time. But they buried her in her prom dress. And this dress was inspired by Belle from Beauty and the Beast, which she starred in as Belle in the school production. And of course, I cannot leave here today without telling you more about the outstanding work that her parents have done in Kelsey's memory, which starts with the Kelsey Smith Foundation. On July 7th, 2007, less than 5 weeks after losing their daughter, Greg and Missy founded this foundation, not only to honor her memory, but to empower other people to protect society's youth and young adults. Kelsey was someone who often made a difference in the lives of others, so this foundation is their way of carrying on her legacy. And if any of you guys are from the Kansas City area, or really anywhere, you may have actually had the pleasure of hearing Kelsey's parents speak. They have done speaking engagements all over the country to educate people on personal safety awareness and preparedness. Now, we're often taught what to do in a situation where we need to fight back against an attacker, but their goal is to help people avoid being in those situations to begin with. Not only do they offer educational opportunities, but they also give out whistles to attendees, and they've awarded scholarships too. Plus, there's an annual golf tournament every year in the Overland Park area, so if you're local, maybe you can check out their Facebook page and learn more. Maybe you can go. The 2025 tournament is already over, but it's never too early to show your support and interest for 2026. Their Facebook page and website both have a lot of information on them, and they are posting updates pretty frequently if you want to learn more. So I'll be sure to have those linked for you guys. Also, it would be awesome, and you guys are so good about this, but if you went the extra mile, went to their Facebook page and engaged with it in some way, whether you like it or leave a comment, that's really the best if you can do that, because that just lets their family know that Kelsey's case has reached new people and that you are in support of them. And I've had so many families that we've worked with, or families that, we've covered their case here, just tell me how much this support means from you guys. I mean, it really does make a huge difference. So thank you. But everything that I have just gone over is not where their efforts end. And this is so beyond impressive, you guys. But Obviously, when Greg and Missy were reflecting on what happened to Kelsey, there was one thing that made this already horrific situation 1,000 times worse. And that was how long it took Verizon to release that cell phone location data. I mean, it was just torture for them. So they decided that they wanted to get a law passed so that other people could avoid being put in the same situation. Now, they don't blame Verizon for what happened to her. They know that nothing would have changed as far as final outcome goes if they had turned over that data sooner, but it would have saved them 4 days of agony. So in April of 2009, they got the Kelsey Smith Act passed in the state of Kansas. And since then, you guys, they have got it passed in a total of 31 states. And odds are you may have already heard of it. So according to a federal law known as the Electronic Communications Privacy Act, if law enforcement reaches out to a cell phone provider, that provider may release certain customer information if they, the provider, believes someone's life is in danger. But her parents, and so many others out there, see this as extremely limiting. First of all, why should it be up to a cell phone provider if someone's life is in danger? That makes actually no sense. And second of all, why wouldn't they just be required to release potentially life-saving information? Saying that they may do it is just not enough. And that's where the Kelsey Smith Act comes into play. Kelsey's law makes it so that cell phone providers shall provide customers' location to law enforcement without a warrant when someone's life is at risk of death or serious physical harm. And under this law, it's up to law enforcement if that individual's life is in danger. And if you've listened to true crime for any amount of time, definitely in the cases that I've covered, I almost guarantee you that this law has likely played a role in those cases without you even knowing it. And Kelsey's parents are on a mission. They are not going to stop advocating for this law until it is passed in all 50 states and passed as federal law as well. There have been a number of setbacks over the years, but never once has it stopped them from pushing forward. They know for a fact that this law saves lives, and they wholeheartedly believe, and I do too, that making this a federal law will only continue to save more. And what's been so beautiful is it's helped people in many different ways and scenarios that they didn't even expect. Like, for example, there was a man who had a stroke and he wasn't able to communicate about where he was, but because of the Kelsey Smith Act, they were able to locate him before it was too late. In another instance, a car was stolen with a baby inside, and the baby was able to be recovered because of the Kelsey Smith Act. And there are countless other stories too. And this is all thanks to their parents, and their efforts just cannot be understated. Greg even got elected into the Kansas House of Representatives in 2010, and then elected as a member of the Kansas Senate from 2013 to 2017 to help push for positive change. And both he and Missy have just done outstanding work over these last 18 years. And Kelsey is the inspiration behind it all. And it's crazy to say this, but Kelsey has now been gone longer than she was alive, which has been really hard on their entire family. And there are just so many milestones that they, of course, wish she got to be a part of. Her whole family is pretty confident that she probably would have gotten married to John by now and likely would have gone on to have kids of her own. In fact, on her 16th birthday, Greg had given her this box of sentimental items, and in that box was a letter to her future husband. And after she died, he gave that letter to John, which I think just says so much about how seriously he took his daughter's relationship, how much he cares for John. It's really devastatingly beautiful. At 18 years old, Kelsey had already lived so much life and yet still had so much life left to live and was really just getting started. And I do believe that she's, able to live on through her parents and their work, and they truly have honored her memory. As I said at the beginning of the episode, I am, of course, just amazed by Missy and Greg. I would love to connect with them. I would love to connect with you all if you happen to see this, like I said. And we will be reaching out to see how we can show our support through the Higher Hope Foundation. But that's going to be it for me this week, guys. I definitely want to hear your thoughts on Kelsey's case and everything that her family has done. I will be back next week to talk about yet another case. But until then, stay safe out there.